Obviously, the Gamergate crowd never really went away, but it got so much more motion in like the past year where like even the very same people that used to make fun of this fucking guy became that guy. And it happened basically overnight. There are some who actually think this guy's awesome. No, I know. But at the time, you gave him attention. Yeah, I made him. You're right. I made him into a person that everybody was making fun of. I kind of want to see. I mean, it's so long, but you know.
Everyone, imagine if you.
I want to see the rise and fall of gamers, dude. Really bad.
The culture war, the great clash of ideologies taking place on the battleground of all the media we read, watch, play, and listen to. Then narrow your focus, if you're able, to just one front of that conflict, the video games front. What I'm going to do today is attempt to relate to you a single incident that happened on that front not too long ago. It wasn't a very consequential incident, it didn't really come to much, and it was almost entirely contained on the aggressive side of the culture war, and it wasn't even particularly popular there, to be honest, in terms of the number of people who cared about it. Nevertheless, I am going to tell you about it today. So our story begins with a tweet from the 1st of February of this year. The account @Grums on Twitter wrote, "It's AAA game dev, triggering time. New Stellar Blade trailer just dropped." So if you're
don't show me! I hope Shaun doesn't show me this Stellar Blade trailer because it's going to trigger me to no end. It's going to kill me to see Korean titties. I will die. I will perish. As a woke man, I hate boobs. Okay? As a woke man, I hate it.
Anything approaching a normal person, you probably have a few questions about this tweet.
It's so funny, by the way, that like gamers have decided, why are we not watching Themasius' playlist? First of all, Sheltered Rosebud, it's the weekend, so I urge you to shut the f up, okay? Secondly, I don't even think Themasius sent a playlist today, okay? God damn. Yeah, there you go. I didn't send one. It's like, can I just go a day without Sheltered Rosebud turning around and just like dictating what happens on the stream? There's 24,000 other people in here, but like, nope, we got to listen. Yeah, sorry that I'm not doing hardcore news coverage for you, okay? Please stop backseating. Jesus Christ. And we've hit a level 3 hype train.
Who is Grumps?
I do find it very funny that gamers have basically made being like an incredibly horny person that is annoying to be around a political movement. Like they have moralized and politicized being a horn dog, where they're like, no, dude, booba is good. It's a political movement. Please, you don't fucking understand it. And it's like, you're such a gross little pervert, dog. What the fuck are you saying? And I say this as someone who also every now and then enjoys a nice booba. But how the fuck do you create a political movement around gooning, dude?
Grums, what is Stellar Blade? It's a video game. And why is a video game trailer being released being assumed here to be, quote, triggering to game developers, since, I mean, that's the sort of thing you'd imagine they'd be used to, right? So let's attempt to answer these questions.
Thank you for the 5 gifted. Mythic, thank you for the 5 gifted.
Grums is the Twitter account of game developer
Crispy
Mark
Bacon Fox,
Kern.
thank you for the 10
Mark
gifted.
Kern is best known for working at Blizzard Entertainment on the original release of popular MMO World of Warcraft in the early 2000s. Kern left Blizzard in 2005 and has since spent his time doing sod all. Well, that's not very fair. After leaving Blizzard, Kern co-founded Red 5 Studios, a company he became the CEO of in 2008. Red 5 Studios was creating a game called Firefall, the production of which was very turbulent. Kern came under fire for allegedly massively overspending on advertising for the game, most notably on a custom-ordered Fire.
That's the other part of this that I'm very frustrated by, is that like this dumb has never actually produced positive results and has like unironically done the exact same kind of Kickstarter grift that they used to shit on like Anita Sarkeesian and Brianna Wu over. But gamers don't seem to track it in the same way because Grums is like a gross little fucking gremlin nerd, and he's fighting the good fight against you know, woke in video games.
Firefall-themed bus, which cost millions of dollars and was rubbish. Employees within Red 5 described Kern's leadership style as erratic, impulsive, and very disruptive. He was accused of taking extended absences from work only to turn up and suddenly demand sweeping changes to the game. As such, he was generally seen as a hindrance to Firefall's development, and he was eventually removed as CEO.
How are these gamers so shameless in behaving this way publicly? Because they don't go out in public, okay? They don't. Oh my god, brother, shut the fuck up. I'm not going to talk about NATO right now. Just go, please, just go and watch, I don't know, HasanAbi, NATO, Turkey, reacts to best marks or something, and you'll develop a better understanding. You haven't stopped fucking demanding that I stop everything and talk about NATO. God damn.
By the company's board of directors. Kern then founded Mech Entertainment in 2014.
Are you going to address the allegations? You're going to be coward hiding behind ignorance?
Blockchain integrated.
What allegations? What is it the fact that Korean booba gamers are waiting for me and I haven't played the Korean dating sim? Is that what you're going to say? Is that the allegations? Malsuk is better than Gran? I don't disagree with you. I think Malsuk is still best girl, but has been hard. It's been hard for me to win her over.
Created virtual reality MMO for the Oculus Rift. And that didn't happen, obviously. Kern's next game, I suppose, was Ember, written EM-8ER, which is touted as a spiritual successor to Firefall. See, Firefall, Ember, you get it. Ember is, as far as I can tell, looking at development videos on YouTube, a game where you play a robot and shoot at little white cubes. Ember was announced 8 years ago and was in its pre-alpha phase for ever. It is still in its pre-alpha phase, I mean. Kern has made a lot of big promises about all the features the game is definitely going to have in the future, but as the years roll by, even the people who pay to support this project are starting to sound a little frustrated with him.
So this part is directly for you grums. Get off Twitter. Stop with this anti-woke crusade and just focus on the game. If you want to prove everyone is wrong, then be quiet, hunker down, and make what you keep telling the world you're going to make.
The top YouTube comment on one of these videos says that Ember, quote, is already running the exact same course as Firefall did back then, and for the same reasons. Ages of radio silence, change of gameplay focus, countless redesigns, lack of leadership, mismanagement of project funds. Both projects suffer from the same major problem, Mark Kern. Now
this is what is so endlessly frustrating about the hypocrisy lovers out there, you know? People love to seek out hypocrisy, or maybe even in certain instances, hypocrisy might not exist, right? Against your ideological opponents. But like, this guy is literally responsible for the exact same type of shit that gamers are supposed to fucking hate. And yet, because he is, you know, on this horny crusade and can so easily create controversy by just simply pointing to the dumbest shit possible over and over again by being like, every game now sucks because there's in it, okay? Or this game sucks because Sweet Baby Inc. worked on putting in the game. So many gamers just like refuse to reckon with his own obvious hypocrisy here, that he is a failure of a developer and has grifted a shit ton of funders into believing that he was going to make an incredible video game that he never did.
YouTuber in the clip there mentioned an anti-woke crusade from Mark Kern, which we'll get to in a second, but related to that, how do you get people to pay for a pre-alpha game which barely exists? Because people subscribe to support this game. The Ember website advertises founder packs which go up to $1,500 and which offer various in-game perks. And by in-game perks, I of course mean if and when the game actually exists.
The exceeding majority of gamers don't know who Grums is, let's be real. I know, they don't, but they know Asmongold. And Asmongold always fucking hypes up Grums. That's the problem. Like, a lot of this shit, a lot of people get their markers from this dipshit. And they basically will, you know, look to him as their North Star, as their guider, okay, throughout the stupid ass reactionary slant that so many goddamn oily gamers have gone through. It's so frustrating. Some of it is because 35-year-old men realize that gaming doesn't hit as hard as it once did when you were a baby and you didn't have bills to pay, okay? Others are understandable frustrations at the state of gaming now as a direct consequence of major companies, developers and publishers basically turning everything into EA, okay? Recreating the same cycle of FIFA over and over again, but for every other fucking game. There's also live service and microtransactions added on to the fucking bill and DLCs. Ultimately, it's capitalism, okay? It destroys art. It is not because of wokeness. And I don't know how to get this across to gamers in general who are like, nah, it's not that. It's actually wokeness. Okay? Yes, capitalism has a tendency to commodify and then ruin art.
To the point where something could be described as being in it. These perks could be in it. What does it mean, for instance, to buy a character skin in Ember? Well, right now it means you get access to a picture of concept art of a skin for a character which as of yet does not actually exist. And the purchase agreement on the site makes it very clear you cannot ask for a refund on any digital purchase so long as the game is in development. Now, I don't want to make any legally actionable claims here, but I have seen a few people suggest that this whole thing is a bit shady. At a glance, it resembles all the worst of fear of missing out, limited time offer, predatory game monetization, only without the actual game part backing it up. So why, you might ask, would somebody pay money to support this project? Well, if we look through some of these skins, there's certainly a theme, isn't there? A scantily clad lady theme. So keeping those scantily clad ladies in mind, let's talk about the anti-woke crusade. You see, Mark Kern is, to the apparent annoyance of the Ember fanbase, a very active Twitter user, having more than 200,000 followers, and he mainly complains about wokeness, DEI, SJWs, political correctness, or whatever they're calling it this week. For Kern and the anti-woke crowd, there's a battle going on for the soul of video games, you see. Everywhere they look, they see insidious attempts to insert racial and sexual minorities into video games. Not out of some altruistic desire to see wider representation in media, or even a profit-driven desire to market the game to more demographics, but a deliberately malicious attempt to ruin video games. They here can be a very wide variety of people, but it's mainly Western AAA game developers, many indie game developers, most video game publishers, video game distribution services, video game journalists, various video game journalism outlets, consultancy firms who work in the video game industry, woke gamers, and so on. All of those groups, they are part of the woke mind virus, and they're ruining video games by conspiring to put black characters in games and trans characters in games, and make all the beautiful ladies into ugly ladies. And why are they doing this, you might wonder? Well, without going on too long of a tangent, if you dig into it, you'll find the same old right-wing narrative about so-called cultural Marxists attempting to undermine society by eroding and destroying traditional standards of beauty. The only difference is when we talk about traditional standards of beauty today, we're not talking about classical art or architecture, we're talking about. And it's interesting, isn't it, how once upon a time regressives saw video games as one example of the ugly modern degeneracy that was undermining culture, whereas for regressive gamers today, video games play the role of the culture they want to preserve against the ugly modern degeneracy. It's the exact same cultural Marxist script being run, but video games have swapped sides. Regardless, they being the people who make, publish, market, review, and play video games, are coming to destroy video games, and so video games must be defended. Now, in practice, this usually translates to throwing a tantrum anytime a video game with a character creator has pronoun on.
One of my all-time takes was, how did we on Twitter across the board go from making fun of this guy to everyone actively becoming this guy? Like, and it happened. It was always there. Obviously, the Gamergate crowd never really went away, but it got so much more motion in like the past year, where like even the very same people that used to make fun of this fucking guy became that guy. And it happened basically overnight. There are some who actually think this guy's awesome. No, I know. But at the time, you gave him attention. Yeah, I made him. You're right. I made him into a person that everybody was making fun of. Yeah. Yeah, someone with a much larger platform that churns out this guy's fucking screeds on a daily basis would be Asmongold. Someone who has very similar opinions to this fucking guy. He's not even remotely responsible for this. It's me. I made fun of him with like everybody else. I apologize for making fun of the Eggman.
Options, but it also means supporting video games that come across to them as being anti-woke. And Stellar Blade from Korean developer Shift Up was flagged as a potential anti-woke game soon after it was announced, featuring as it does a protagonist who is a sexualized, conventionally attractive lady who wears a variety of skimpy outfits. Hence, it's AAA game dev triggering time, says Mark Kern. The Stellar Blade trailer is supposed to be upsetting to game developers who supposedly hate conventionally attractive ladies in skimpy outfits on here. The next month, when a demo for Stellar Blade was released, Kern posted on Twitter, "Now that Stellar Blade demo is out, so be on the lookout and DM me or at me any tasty dev or press meltdown please. I'm sure there is some massive triggering going on. Fellow devs," yeah right, "if you have inside stories to tell on the internal reactions to Stellar Blade, my DMs are open." So there is a massive triggered meltdown reaction to the Stellar Blade demo going on. Kern is sure of it. It's just that for the moment it's going on somewhere where we can't see it. It's an internal outrage, apparently. It's a quiet one, and so he has to ask for examples of it. And let's read a few responses to some of Kern's tweets here. "Oh no, beautiful women that for some reason get gay men and ugly women mad. More of this, please. The industry needs to heal. Ah, why do normal people find attractive people attractive? Gaming devs and press. Ah, me. Jiggle physics. He. Pearl clutching intensifies, along with
Like they invented a backlash that didn't even fucking exist. Okay? There are a million different games that have booba in it, okay? A million of them. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. It literally does not matter. But they basically invented a reaction against it because it's not good enough on its own, okay? It's not good enough on its own. You can't just hit it raw. You can't just like enjoy the game on its own. There has to also be a political movement associated with enjoying the game, and that political movement can only be defined by its enemies, okay? And if there are no enemies against this video game coming out, then we must invent them. And that's precisely what happened with Stellar Blade. Like, it's just so fucking stupid.
A gif of a woman shouting, "I hate you." And there were a lot more responses in this vein. Rather smug gamers posting reaction gifs and writing little skits about how upset the woke game developers.
Just saw your story on IG. I didn't know you had abs. What the fuck? You know what? I forgot to showcase what I did this morning and in my workout. So you know what? I'm gonna fucking do it right now. Also, this. Yo, I was looking like one of those calisthenic guys. Holy shit, your scapula are fucked. Yes, it is. You held that for a split second. No, I can do an L-sit for like 15 seconds. No, scapula are not the cum gutter things. No.
What's up?
Also, this is the fit pick for today. Anyway, let's get back to the gamers now after I showed you that brief moment. Don't read chat. They're going to be annoying. Do you feel like you're lifting change since Dr. Mike? I focus on eccentrics a lot more and making sure that it's definitely a slower eccentric when I'm working out.
/journalist mob are about Stellar Blade. You see, the gamer lads here see Stellar Blade's character designs as a political statement, one running counter to their characterization of how the so-called woke mob is trying to ruin games with diversity and ugliness and so on. So Stellar Blade to them represents a pushback against a perceived Puritan attempt to remove all the attractive, sexy characters from video games. Except, I am old enough to remember all the way back to 1 year ago, when Baldur's Gate 3 came out. Baldur's Gate 3, developed by Larian Studios, is the third installment of the Baldur's Gate series, and has been a massive commercial and critical success. It's sold more than 10 million copies, it's one of the highest rated games of all time on Metacritic, it won the Game of the Year award at the Golden Joystick Awards, the Game Awards, the British Academy Game Awards, and the Game Developers' Choice Awards. It was also named as Game of the Year by various gaming journalism outlets, such as GameSpot, Games Radar, PC Gamer, Screen Rant, and many others.
That's the funniest thing, that they have no answer to Baldur's Gate 3 because it was literally a woke nightmare, okay, from their perspective. But it doesn't really matter because Baldur's Gate was successful. It was a real gamer's game, which is precisely the reason why this omega gay game, this super pro-trans game, didn't actually invoke the same level of outrage. Because these guys will look to bad games, okay, that are hastily put together by these corporations that just want to serve fucking slop, and will say, oh, these games suck because of woke. No, those games don't suck because of woke, dumbass. Those games suck because corporations are hyper focusing on farming people as hard as they possibly can with nostalgia and all this other nonsense without actually offering any sort of like artistic integrity or artistic vision. Okay? That's it. When a game sucks, oh, it's because of woke. When a game is good, it's, oh, because they defeated woke. It's a very simple method. Ironically enough, there are a million different examples of video games that were seemingly woke on arrival, that these gamers, and not just like video games, but TV shows too, were seemingly woke on arrival, but actually got major box office success and real audiences that all of a sudden turned into anti-woke games. There are so many of these dipshits out there. There are so many fucking assholes out there who literally don't even delete their former videos. Okay? They don't even delete the old videos. They'll farm it, claiming that like something is going to be woke and it's going to be gay and it's going to suck. And then when people love it, they're like, oh, it's actually because it's not woke. And it's ironic because these are the people who say, why are you making everything political? They are the ones who make everything fucking political and unbearable.
Game developers and game journalists absolutely love Baldur's Gate 3. And Baldur's Gate 3 is horny as hell. To start with, I don't even know if I can show you the character creator from Baldur's Gate 3, but it's got options, let's say. Like, 4 skin options. I myself have been playing through Baldur's Gate 3 recently and having a grand old time with it, playing a fancy little gnome bard, but I haven't really been pursuing the romantic or sexual options, and as such I didn't really have an idea of the extent of it. So instead I had to click through the IGN YouTube upload of the romance scenes in the game, which is more than 2 hours long by the way, and I was red-faced and scandalized clicking through some of this. They do it. You see their bits. And there's everything. There's naked demon ladies and tentacled squid men. I think someone had it off with a bear at one point. They are going for it in Baldur's Gate, apparently. So we've got a seemingly extremely wide variety of romance options, and you can design your character to look however you like, be as attractive or unattractive as you want to be, and your party of conventionally attractive companions can be dressed, or undressed, or romanced by you, and all this raises a question, doesn't it? If so-called woke Western game developers and Puritan journalists supposedly hate sex and sexiness and attractiveness so much, why was this veritable orgy of a game so beloved by them? This would be the exact sort of thing that they're supposed to hate, right? But they think it's great, clearly, so what's going on here then? To attempt to answer this, let's first see if we can try to find any examples of any game developers or journalists actually being mad about Stellar Blade. As it turns out, Mark Kern's call for examples of Stellar Blade meltdowns netted one singular potential lead. A Twitter user replied to Kern on the 30th of March saying, "Take a look at IGN France." So let's take a look at IGN France. This page is a preview of Stellar Blade, talking about the pre-release demo of the game, which was posted on the 27th of March, in French, on the website IGN France. The writer of this article is on the whole very enthusiastic about nearly every aspect of Stellar Blade, praising the combat, the atmosphere, the soundtrack, and so on. The single exception is the main character, Eve's, character design, which he refers to as bland and likens to a doll sexualized by someone who has never seen a woman. Now I think this second point here is not really fair for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I'd say that it's a bit hasty to so definitively judge Eve's character design based off of playing a demo which only shows a very small part of the game.
Also, it's a real person, and I was shocked when I found out it was a real person. And then, I had to do some investigations, okay? I had to personally investigate as a video game journalist who cares about the truth. And yes, it is a real Korean model.
Game story, because it's possible that the full game would give some additional context to the character designs. It might not be all that likely, but it is possible, so I'd call this a bit of a rush to judgment, to be honest. The article compares Eve's design unfavourably to that of Bayonetta and 2B from Nier Automata, which are designs that I like and think work in the games that they're in, but you might not get the full context of why they work if you've only played a small demo segment of the game, right? So if I were writing this demo review, I'd probably have said something like, from what we can see in the demo, Eve seems bland, and hopefully the full game fleshes her out a bit more, something like that. Next, the doll sexualized by someone who's never seen a woman line could be read as a crack at the developers, and I don't really think it's all that fair to take a crack at the devs having not played the full game. I must say though, I don't think it actually is a serious crack at the devs, since the next paragraph of the review talks about the Korean model, Shin Jae-yoon, whose body scan served as the base for Eve's in-game model, so obviously the author knows the developers have seen a real woman. They're just describing Eve's design in a hyperbolic way. Still though, in isolation this comes across as a bit prematurely rude, and IGN France apparently agreed with this because they later deleted the sexualized by someone who has never seen a woman sentence and apologized to the developers of Stellar Blade. So you might be thinking, is that it? Is this the extent of the massive triggering that Mark Kern was so sure was going on? A single sentence from the French preview of the demo of Stellar Blade, which was otherwise very positive about the game and recommended it. Surely that's not going to be enough, right? If we're going to kick off a culture war battle about this, we're going to need a little more ammunition, aren't we? It's going to be hard to claim that journalists are trying to destroy Stellar Blade or something ridiculous like that if you only have one example and it's from someone who likes Stellar Blade. And it's going to be even harder to claim that journalists are biased against conventionally attractive characters in video games, considering the author of this piece spoke favourably about both Bayonetta and 2B from Nier Automata. They just called Eve's design.
What's so insane about this is that it goes back to what I say all the time. Narrative is more important than the truth. Biased political actors with an ideological purpose have basically made millions of people online, millions of gamers online, believe in this false notion that like devs actually fucking hate sexy women. Like, it is so frustrating. To draw a much larger point on this, it is so frustrating to see something so transparently incorrect, and yet it doesn't matter. No amount of evidence that you suggest to the contrary will shake people out of this fucking stupor.
Design bland by comparison, so surely this can't be enough, can it? Oh no, what's happened here then? It seems we've got some discourse to take a look at, so where did all this come from? Well, later on the 30th of March, Mark Kern posted a tweet showing the offending sentence from the IGN France article, alongside a picture of the same woman mentioned in the article, who was scanned to provide Eve's character model, as well as a picture of the CEO of ShiftUp's wife, who also works at the company. So this is a classic gotcha, isn't it? The article says Eve is like a doll sexualized by someone who has never seen a woman, but look, here are some women who worked on the game, which contradicts that assessment. Very good. It is undercut somewhat, though, by the fact the IGN France article does talk about that Korean model, in the very next paragraph in fact, saying, quote, Shin Jae-yoon, the poor Korean model serving as the character's model, is lost under layers of clumsy plastic modifications that make her unrecognizable both in body and face. So this tweet from Mark Kern doesn't really work all that well on that front, does it? Eve was based on a real woman doesn't work as a retort to someone who acknowledges her design was based on a real woman, but dislikes it in part for not resembling that woman. In fact, this tweet only works specifically do not include the context that the IGN France article talks about Shin Jae-yoon, which Mark Kern, of course, does not. Now, many of these videos are just people reading out this tweet from Mark Kern and having a big old laugh about how IGN France doesn't know Eve is based on a real woman, which of course they do, because they talk about her.
For people asking, is this what Gamergate was like? Yes. One statement from an article from a dude who is like outwardly positive towards a game, taken out of context, is enough for this onslaught of right-wing fucking grifters trying to farm desperate goddamn losers into clicking in their videos and getting angry about a thing that is not real. Gamergate was significantly worse than this because there's a whole litany of death threats associated with it too. But it's in the same vein, basically.
But these YouTubers don't know that because they didn't go and read the article. All they've seen of it is this one sentence from Mark Kern's tweet.
This tweet by Grum seems to be going viral currently. It's at over 50,000 likes and almost 2 million views after a day. And that because it embarrasses IGN and two of the arguments they made. It says, so IGN calls the Stellar Blade protagonist a sexualized doll and says the creator has never seen a living woman. And after that, showcasing the not real doll, as IGN called her, and then the creator's wife, who's also simultaneously an artist on the team. So apparently IGN was too lazy to do even the most basic research on the game before publishing such disrespectful statements.
And yes, so IGN calls Stellar Blade protagonist a sexualized doll and says the creator has never seen a living woman. So, as you see, IGN spreading lies, as of course the mainstream always does. And this is only going to get worse because of the left-wing lunatics that are out there.
Because once again, there is no research or nothing being shown. This is why people are calling this out right now. Because it's quite literally a model. This is quite literally a real-life person this is based on.
And I always find this to be kind of a stupid take because this is the model the game is based on, being motion captured here. It is very much based on real women.
I don't know what I'm angry at. I don't know what makes me more angry. The fact that this kind of shit is kickstarted by like one dumbass, or the fact that so many people are susceptible to this kind of framing and get duped by a singular tweet. I don't know. I just like it. It's so frustrating to see this.
Now, Kern's tweet was one way into this discourse. Some other YouTubers were instead reading out this article from boundingintocomics.com, which makes the same mistake as Kern, saying, further, while Eve herself may be a fictional character, her appearance is not, instead being based on a full one-to-one body scan of real-world South Korean model Shin Jae-yoon. In light of both their ignoring of these facts and their blatant attempt to insult Kim, that's the CEO of ShiftUp there, both Asola and IGN France soon found themselves facing a massive wave of backlash from the general public regarding their lack of journalistic integrity. Which, one, is very funny talking about journalistic integrity while accusing IGN France of ignoring something that they did in fact talk about, and two, is very funny claiming there was a massive wave of backlash from the general public about this. Yes, they were
This is why I gave up a long time ago trying to address some of the commonly held criticisms around someone like myself. I was wrong. Two mistakes I made in my career was one, openly admitting to being anti-capitalist, and two, ever thinking that people actually gave a singular shit about the truth. Because for people, it's not about a genuine interest or intellectual curiosity or genuine interest in understanding what the reality is. It's simply people that want to have their suspicions confirmed. That's why in so many fucking instances, you see people that are in this chat, okay, that will just straightforwardly refuse to listen to what I have to say. I'll literally be criticizing someone on screen, and in that very same moment, they'll be like, I bet you love this, Hasan. Yeah, I can tell you love this. I mean, we saw this during election night when so many people came in and were like, oh, I bet you're crying right now. And I was like, I'm not. I knew that this was going to happen. I said that this was going to happen. And I was already upset no matter who won. And yet people were just like, nah, you're seething. You're seething. Another example of this is like the famous case of when I was in Australia, having the time of my fucking life, hanging out with my friends, not being online. And because I responded to someone in my Discord as, I'm going to kill myself. All right, which is, you know, classic response online. The very same people that say that on a daily basis were like, oh, he's literally going to commit suicide. He's like actually exhibiting suicidal ideation. And when I corrected the people where I was like, I had no fucking clue this was happening online. I wasn't even online. People were like, nah, you're just lying. Nah, you're just lying, dog. Remember when you almost killed yourself because your view counts were down? It's like, no, I don't, because that's not a real thing. But it doesn't matter. It does not matter, because the truth does not matter. What matters to a lot of people is how many YouTube essays we can make debating whether or not your favorite content creator has good vibes or not. The actual interpersonal relationship in that moment from fucking 5-10 years ago is completely inconsequential. What is more important is the narrative that you can lead on Reddit. And people would openly rather just continue along with a falsehood than to actually understand what the truth is. And when faced with the direct evidence that their narrative is incorrect, they just double down on it. Anyway, when I watched you debate that drama tuber looking for a video, I knew you were right, but disappointed you engaged with this guy who's clearly farming for a YouTube video. The guy had to take a break to watch his own YouTube video mid-debate for talking points, but I was still mad at you for engaging with the drama YouTuber. Yeah. Also, when that girl came up to you about Pepsi or whatever, people thought you were so triggered, but you weren't. Clip Chimps trying to make something more than it is. Yeah. People absolutely would rather have their own preconceived biases reinforced than to develop a better understanding of what the fuck's going on. That's it.
Marching in the streets of Paris, weren't they, about this article? Do you hear the people sing? We demand IGN France acknowledge that Eve from Stellar Blade on the PS5 was based on Korean model Shin Jae-eun. Even though they did. Now, the third way that YouTubers got into this discourse was by copying each other's videos. Like, look, he's just nicked his thumbnail and all. Some of these videos were commentary videos, you see, and by commentary videos I of course mean they watched a video that someone else made and paused it occasionally and said, yeah.
Yeah. And I always find this to be kind of a stupid take, because this is the model the game is based on, being motion captured here. It is very much based on real women.
That's big-time internet streamer Asmongold putting his personal touch on this discourse by sitting in the corner there and watching this other video on the channel Yellow Flash Productions, which covers both the tweet from Mark Kern and the article on boundingintocomics.com. The video of Asmongold's stream posted on the channel Asmongold TV got
8 layers of falsehood with something of no material importance whatsoever, by the way. Because the other side of the story is the patently unserious nature of this conversation. What if IGN actually was mad at the titties? Who fucking cares? You know what I mean? Who cares? Even if it was 100% correct, even if Grums was absolutely correct that like they were seething, who gives a shit? Just play the fucking game, dumbass. Why can't you just enjoy the game on its own? Why do you have to imagine some woke libtards being owned somewhere, okay? In fucking France, of all places, too. You know, a nation state known for its unique approach to feminism in general. I think that a lot of these gamers would recognize that they are a lot closer to the average French person in their understanding of sexualized, fantasies than they think that they have disagreements on, okay?
Got nearly 1 million views, more than 10 times the views of the video he was watching, but don't feel bad about that. Asmongold is just watching someone read out something someone else said about something they didn't do any research about. It is lazy bastards all the way down today. Lazy and liars as well. Let's take a look at a couple of these thumbnails. This one from the channel Manix has a fake quote from an IGN Twitter account that says, in all caps, "Don't buy this game." This one also shows up in the thumbnails for videos on other channels, like these ones. There's also fake review scores in there, pretending IGN gave the game a score of 3 out of 10, which, I mean, it wasn't even out yet, and they hadn't reviewed it. They gave it a 7 when they did review it. The channel Dread Roberts has a video with a thumbnail that proclaims, "They want this game to die," in all caps, along with the quote, "She's a whore."
Like, this is so unserious, dude, imagine. Is this the peak of your political movement? Like, even if this was real, even if IGN wanted this game to die, really? That's what you want to associate with? on your deathbed, that's what you're going to remember. The conquest you engage in. The fact that it's not real and it's simply just like right-wing hysteria that people associated with and people just like ran along with makes it even worse. But also, even if this was a real thing, even if IGN actually had come out and was like, I fucking hate this game, I hope it dies, treating this like your own personal 9/11 is just like, how bored are you?
Or under the IGN logo, which, well, IGN didn't say that, of course. Even the IGN France article that criticised Eve's design was broadly positive about the other aspects of the game. I mean, it doesn't make sense, does it? If IGN wanted to hurt the sales of Stellar Blade, why would they attack it in only a single paragraph of an otherwise favourable preview that only went up on their French website? Like, if there's some plot from IGN to destroy Stellar Blade, it's being expressed in the most obscure, contradictory way possible. So why are these videos pretending that IGN did trash the game and try to kill it? Well, for clicks, obviously. They want a big culture war Gamergate moment so badly that they're willing to play pretend to try to get one started. And this is one of the interesting things to me today. It's the yearning for a lost glory, I suppose. Watching through some of these videos reminded me of those Imperial Japanese soldiers living in the jungle who didn't realise World War II was over. These are the bedraggled remnants of the Gamergate army, bravely fighting on long past cares at all. I think we need to get in touch with Davis Arini or someone so we can formally give them the order to stand down. One thing that stood out to me watching these videos was that the video makers would often make very confident predictions about both 1, Stellar Blade being a great game deserving of very high scores, and 2, the gaming press giving it low scores when it does come out. Watching one of these videos, I heard a guy say he was sure Stellar Blade would get low review scores, quote, nothing close to the higher scores it deserves. And this was posted in a video before Stellar Blade was released. Like, they're already sure it's a great game. It's already deserving of high scores before they've even played it, simply by virtue of what it represents. Now, it would be unfair of me to dole out criticisms of people speaking prematurely about a game they haven't played if I myself then went on to talk about said game having not played it. So I played the entirety of Stellar Blade. I streamed it on my Twitch channel, which I'll link in the description. So out of a sense of due diligence and to prove I actually did play the game, I'm going to review Stellar Blade now for too long. We'll get to the character designs later on, but for now I'll say that whatever criticisms can be made about Eve's character design, there are other characters in Stellar Blade who deserve those same criticisms, but to a much greater degree. If Eve's design is a little uncanny valley, then at the bottom of the uncanny valley is opened up an uncanny sinkhole, which contains neotenous monsters like Kaya and Lily, who make Eve look positively pedestrian by comparison. I'll give a spoiler warning here for Stellar Blade, of course, and I also have to give a spoiler warning here for the 2017 game Nier Automata, for reasons that will become very apparent very quickly. So okay, Stellar Blade. If I had to sum up Stellar Blade in a single word, I'd say it is derivative. As an example here, let's start out by giving an overview of the basic premise of the story. So, in Stellar Blade, you play as an android on a post-apocalyptic Earth that was devastated in an ancient war between what you're told was humanity and a race of alien invaders. Launching from a base in orbit of the planet, your mission is to fight and defeat the invaders on behalf of a humanity that, unbeknownst to you, no longer exists. Now, anyone who's played Platinum Games' 2017 release Nier Automata will right now be saying, hang on a minute, isn't that just the plot of Nier Automata? And yes, it is. The plot of Stellar Blade is strikingly similar to the plot of Nier Automata. The only difference is in the twist, really. In Nier, the twist is that the humanity you're fighting for is extinct, whereas in Stellar Blade, it's that the humanity you're fighting for actually turned into the monsters that you're fighting. So, you know, it's not exactly the same, but it does give big can I copy your homework vibes. Being kind, we'll say it took very heavy inspiration.
Oh, wow. I can't believe we both spoiled a video game that you're never going to fucking play. And also another video game that is a classic that has been around for almost a decade. Shut the fuck up.
The story and world and many elements of the general design and gameplay and music especially are very derivative of Nier Automata, but Stellar Blade also borrowed from other places. The combat system takes inspiration from the likes of Sekiro and God of War. It's got the Souls-like enemy respawn mechanic. There are horror-styled sections that are trying to be like a Dead Space or a Resident Evil. There's a bit where you climb up a train car as it's falling off a cliff, which is literally just the first level of Uncharted 2. The last human city on this post-apocalyptic Earth is called Zion. Like in The Matrix, you might say, but no, this Zion is spelled with an X, so it's different. The people of Zion look up to an old, wise robot leader called Oracle. Kind of like the Oracle in The Matrix, you might say, but no, this is Oracle with no E, so it's different. The android residents of Zion are being stored in a bunch of pods to save power, so they're not generating power, they're in the pods to save power. So again, it's not exactly like The Matrix, but it is heavily reminiscent of The Matrix, yes. Now, there's nothing wrong with taking inspiration from other media, of course. Lots of great games wear their inspirations openly, but the problem with Stellar Blade is that it takes all of this stuff and smushes it together and then doesn't really do anything interesting with it. While a lot of the individual elements of Stellar Blade are fine by themselves, they don't ever really come together. The game feels more like a mix of various things the creators thought would be cool to put in a video game, rather than things that actually made sense to put in this video game. As an example, let's look at some enemy designs. So enemies in this game are called naytibas, which, if you know about the conflation of V's with B's in certain languages, including Korean, congratulations, you've spoiled yourself on the twist. Although it could be worse, in previews of the game, the naytibas were called natives. I know writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards. Anyway, the story with the naytibas is that humanity was in a war with an AI that wanted to replace them with androids, and in their desperation, the humans turned to bioengineering to evolve humanity to the point where they could fight back. But these bioengineering experiments got out of control or something, and the humans lost their minds and turned into monsters. So that's the setup, but let's take a look at some of these enemy designs. Some of them look like big insects, some of them look like mutated statues, some of them look like squids, some of them look like robots. Some of them look like different sorts of robots with fleshy parts hanging out. Some of them look like giant beasts. Some of them look like organisms controlling a human host. Some of them look like zombies. Some of them look like fungal growths or spores or something. One boss looks like...
Look, it's not like a fucking game changer by any metric. It's just like a bubblegum ass game. A 5 out of 10 ass game. That's it. It looks nice. There's sexy ladies in it. And ultimately, it's the same old shit, which leads me to believe that a lot of people simply did not like Horizon Zero Dawn, not because of its repetitive gameplay, but because the main character wasn't fuckable enough. Like, that's it. That's like this is a worse game than Horizon Zero Dawn, but with sexier characters. So gamers love this game, but hate Horizon Zero Dawn. So it must be, you know, the fuckability metrics not actually hitting for a lot of these horn dogs, which once again blows my mind that people are not more embarrassed to openly state that. The fact that these people are not embarrassed to state that is crazy. Gene Park liked the game. Yeah, I mean, I'm saying it's a bubblegum game. Like, it's not a bad game. It's just not, you know, moving the needle in a direction. That's the point. Gene also loved Horizon. I personally am not a big fan of like killing mechanic enemies, which is why I you know, while I played the first Horizon game, I didn't actually play the second. Like Zero Dawn, I didn't really play, and it just wasn't like as compelling, and I feel like it's very repetitive. That's it.
Like this, another looks like this, another looks like this, and so on.
Or not, oh, sorry, Zero Dawn I finished. I loved Zero Dawn, even though it still had the same issues. I meant the second game, which is what was it called? Forbidden West, yeah.
Theme to these enemies. They seem like a collection of designs inspired by other games and media. Bayonetta, Half-Life, Metal Gear Solid, Ghost in the Shell, Final Fantasy, and whatever else. Did you like, by the way, in Final Fantasy VII, when the final boss had a wing on only one side of his body? Because if you did, all of your Christmases have come at once, I'm happy to tell you. I think they ripped that design off about 6 times. And now, don't get me wrong, a lot of Stellar Blade's enemy designs are fine in isolation, but they're used absolutely thoughtlessly in the actual game, with either zero or very thin reasoning for what you're actually fighting to be designed the way it is, or located where it is. A lot of these designs were peppered throughout the world seemingly at random. Stellar Blade's music is another example of this. I quite like a lot of the game's soundtrack actually, but I disliked and sometimes couldn't stand the way in which it was used in the game. A lot of the music is fine, but whether or not any track actually matched the part of the game it was used in felt like it was random chance. For instance, the underground horror sequences with jump scares and scary monsters and so on have any tension whatsoever completely evaporated because for some reason they sound like this. I confess I'm disappointed with a lot of mainstream game reviews that rank each aspect of a game with a numerical score, but never consider how the different elements of the game work together. Like, absurd example obviously, but Stardew Valley has a great soundtrack for a relaxing farming sim, but Stardew Valley's soundtrack would not be a good soundtrack for Alien Isolation to have, or vice versa I suppose. You know, even though it would be the same music, it would be a bad soundtrack because of the context it was being used in. It's an obvious point, but you have to consider the whole package and not just each element by itself. The combat in Stellar Blade can be fun. All the parrying, evading, and executing Eve's flashy special moves can be pretty cool when everything comes together. There's the bones of a good combat.
You can tell he's woke because he's playing the most, like, covered up version of this character. Shaun didn't appreciate this game because there's titties in it. I'll say it. He should have been playing on hard difficulty, which is when the character is naked. You want this game to fail.
System here, but unfortunately the game has an issue with balance that more often than not undercuts the fun. The problem is the game has a very flat difficulty curve. Enemies at the beginning of the game are mechanically just as hard as enemies at the end, and there isn't really much difference between fighting any of the bosses in terms of skill either. The game increases the difficulty by simply turning up enemy HP and damage values, but this just has the effect of making the later game feel like a bit of a slog, as you spend a long time whacking away at enemies that are by this point trivial to beat mechanically, but can have what feel like arbitrarily enormous health pools. From Software's Sekiro is a good comparison here.
My fucking least favorite aspect of video games is bullet sponge, which reminds me of the second Horizon game, which is what people say always is like, hey, if you want to actually truly enjoy the combat in that game, you have to play it in hard difficulty. And when you turn it into hard difficulty, it just doesn't improve the AI. It doesn't make the battles tougher. It just makes them bullet sponges.
The enemies at the start of Sekiro are both weaker and mechanically much the end, but the game prevents things from ever turning into a slog by means of its death blow mechanic, which is genius. If you can fill an enemy's posture gauge in Sekiro by keeping up the pressure on them by parrying their attacks and hitting them with your own, you can drain their entire health bar in a single hit regardless of how much health they have left. And this goes for every enemy in the game, even bosses. If you prove you've mastered the mechanics of how to fight them enough to break their posture, you get to end the fight right there. I mentioned Sekiro's posture mechanic here because they put a superficially similar system in Stellar Blade. The posture bar is replaced with these little balance pips under the enemy health pool.
This is why Sekiro will forever remain one of the greatest games of all time. Also, I've reconsidered my stance against Shaun. Clearly, he's playing the sexy bunny costume in this one. I'm afraid I judged him too early. It seems he is a man of taste, and it seems like he's not woke and giving an honest assessment.
Hitting enemies with certain abilities or executing perfect parries will take away one of these pips, and once you deplete them all, you can execute a flashy special move similar to Sekiro's Death Blow, only here, instead of killing the enemy outright, it does a rather underwhelming amount of damage. I felt a little deflated every time I managed to pull one of these off against a boss. You go to all that effort.
I'm back into thinking that he's actually not, he's actually woke and not being fair in his assessment, considering the outfit of this character that he's utilizing. Once again, I'm back on the he's woke and he wants this game to fail train.
Focusing on parrying and whittling away their balance, and you're rewarded with a big flashy attack animation that ends up not really doing all that much. Feeling that my efforts to actually engage with the game's combat mechanics weren't really being appreciated, I ended up beating many bosses by mindlessly spamming Eve's special moves over and over, because why not? Eve has a fancy combat mode she can shift into, similar to God of War's Spartan Rage, where she gains access to a new moveset as well.
Yeah, he's back to critiquing in bad faith. He's so hard to pin down, which only leads me to believe that, lo and behold, he was always woke the entire time and was critiquing in bad faith, and the only reason why he peppered in a naked version was because he wanted to, draw you off the scent. Yeah, look at that. Surprise. I was right all along when I first came into this conversation without playing the video game at all. I had already made up my mind, and it turns out I figured out another way to, confirm my previously held positions without changing them. What I just described to you right here is an analogy to exactly how these guys operate. Do you understand? Naked woman, I like. Very good. Clothed up women, I don't like. Seems like this guy is woke. Ultimately, though, I arrived at this conclusion without even playing the game, and I actually don't even care about playing the game at all. I would much rather enjoy the discourse surrounding the game, and I have already made up my mind about these woke libtards, including Shaun. That's how people operate. That's just it. No one has any real interest in having a normal conversation. No one has any real interest in changing their minds, changing their previously held positions. It is very frustrating.
As well as growing a single wing on one side of her body, fancy that. The spin move she can do in this form has a knockback effect that prevents enemies from countering, so you can just press that over and over with no way for whatever you're fighting to ever do anything back to you. It feels like they made the more mechanically interesting and engaging elements of the combat give low gameplay rewards, whereas mindless repetitive spam is much more consistently rewarded. There are conflicting design influences here that work against each other. Stellar Blade feels like it's trying to be a little bit like Sekiro and a little bit like God of War and a little bit like Nier Automata and Bayonetta and Dead Space and so on, and all the different systems can end up getting in the way of each other. I will say though that when the Stellar Blade developers were looking at other game franchises for things to borrow, I wish that they'd also borrowed some character traits for their characters to have. The main character and the subject of all the fake outrage today is Eve, who is a blank slate with the emphasis on blank. Eve is exceptionally one-dimensional. Her only major motivation is to complete the mission she was assigned, and as far as I can tell, there aren't any interesting reasons for her to want to be doing that. She isn't trying to prove herself, she doesn't desire to be seen in a certain way, she isn't devoting herself to the mission to compensate for something else, she just has been given a mission, and so is going to do it, because that's her job. Eve doesn't really have a sense of humour, and she doesn't engage much with the world beyond the extent she needs to in order to accomplish whatever her task is at that moment. Beyond wanting to complete the mission, as far as other character traits for Eve go, after playing through the whole story, all I've got is that she doesn't like swimming, she often complains about having to go in water, and she seems to like collecting the various collectible cans hidden throughout the game's levels. And that's it. It's pretty thin for a main character there. Or is it?
You're not going to address your goat's pathological lying? Yes. I will not be addressing bad faith critiques that are coming from a position of white supremacy, okay? If you say my goat, James, LeBron James, La Deity, La God, La inventor of basketball is a serial liar, you are a racist, okay? That's it. We are in the process of going through how one singular Twitter thread can actually cause so much commotion amongst people who are already primed to hate one another, okay? Who are already primed to hate a certain position. And here you are doing that same thing against my GOAT, LeBron James. I'm begging you, man, to stop. He is not going to choose you. Yes, he will. One day he is going to know that I've endlessly defended him against these naysayers, and we're going to play basketball together, and I'm going to pour honey on him.
I mean, a main character doesn't necessarily have to be...
Your goat is washed? Okay, this is objectively false. Like, what do you mean my goat is washed? Like, get the fuck out of here, dude. Come on. Okay, all jokes aside, when you say LeBron James is washed, it's like insane. Okay? You will just say whatever kind of ridiculous thing comes to your mind, okay? That's crazy. Like, even his haters would probably be like, even the biggest LeBron haters would be like, okay, dude, like, calm down. How do you defend his need to, like, lie about things like reading books or watching movies? Excuse me. He is an incredibly personable person, okay? Everybody knows that he has dedicated his life to the game that he invented, basketball. For those of you who don't know, LeBron James invented basketball and therefore does not have time for other, humanly pleasures, okay? But because he is our God, okay? Our God, who is an awesome God, he has chosen to make mere mortals feel as though he is just like them. Okay? That's what's going on. That's when he says, like, haha, I read this book, or haha, I love watching football, and I'm a big fan of Arsenal. Like, it doesn't matter. He is above that. He is transcended beyond the need to watch a single Arsenal game, but he's just simply saying that so that, you can feel like he's just like you. Okay? Remember that. Let's continue.
All that complex, do they? You might say Mario or Link are simple game characters with straightforward motivations, for instance, and they're perfectly fine. So what's the problem with Eve being simplistic? Well, the difference is the way in which the narrative is being conveyed, I think. Stellar Blade has long cutscenes, a lot of dialogue, radio chatter while you're playing through the missions, and if a game is going to make you listen to a character talking for hours, it might be nice if they occasionally had something interesting to say. Nintendo doesn't make you watch hours of Mario talking in boring cutscenes, do they? No, he just says, "It's-a me, Mario, let's-a go." And that's all he needs to say. Let's compare Eve to a few other video game characters here. Cloud from Final Fantasy VII and the remake starts out trying very hard to be seen as a stoic, no-nonsense, just there for the mission kind of guy. But over the course of the story, we realise that this stoic persona is an affectation. Cloud is actually a pretty insecure and vulnerable person who's merely trying to present a cool and disaffected front. He is the way he is at the start of the story because he's trying to protect himself. He's traumatized. The way he's acting.
LeBron did not lie about reading Malcolm X's biography. He did not. LeBron knew exactly what had happened, and it was far too emotional for him to engage with the material because he is such a big fan of Malcolm X. So what ended up happening is, when they asked him directly, like, oh, what do you like about the autobiography? Like, or like, what's going on? He was overcome with emotion. He was overcome with emotion, okay? Because he was thinking about how devastating it was that the state had assassinated Malcolm X. And in that moment, he basically just, said something that comes to mind. Obviously, it didn't come across like, pretty honest. It didn't come across like it was honest only because he was overcome with both the feelings of gratitude for what Malcolm X represented, okay? But also overcome with feelings of deep sadness.
Acting is a defense mechanism. Kratos from 2018's God of War, he wants very much to be stoic and unemotional, doesn't he? Having recently lost his wife, he now has to face raising his son alone, and he's scared, and he doesn't know how to be a good father. He only knows how to fight, so he throws himself into that as a distraction. But below the surface, there's a lot of pain and sadness and anger that he doesn't want to let out. And his character arc in the story he's in involves him coming to terms with those things. A bit of a departure genre-wise here, but Kim Kitsuragi from Disco Elysium tries exceptionally hard to be boring, but, or partly because of that, he ends up being one of the most interesting characters ever put in a video game. Kim doesn't like to discuss emotions, he doesn't want to get personal, he just wants to do his job, and be seen to be doing his job, boringly. Now what makes Kim
the only guy that ACAB does not factor into is Kim Kitsuragi, okay? That's the one good cop, the best cop, my goat.
Him so interesting are the times when that carefully maintained facade cracks and you see the person behind it. What makes all of these characters interesting is precisely that, when you see the person they are behind the curtain, and you find out why it is they act the way they do. Kim, for instance, is someone who's subject to racial discrimination. He's gay, he's been made fun of because he wears thick glasses and for embarrassing assignments in his past. And well, there's a lot we could say about Kim, but I'd be in danger of just speaking about Disco Elysium for the whole video, so we'll simplify it and say that Kim really doesn't like to stand out. One commonality here is that all these seemingly simplistic, straightforward characters have other characters to play off, characters with different personalities who draw them out of their shell. Cloud has the rest of his team, though especially Aerith. Kratos has Atreus and Mamiya. 2B has 9S. Kim has Harry. These are characters who are not like them. They might be funny or chaotic or inquisitive or troublesome, and they put the stoic characters in situations that cause them to open up and change, to have a character arc. Now this is hardly Shakespeare, except Disco Elysium of course, which is Shakespeare. This is just the basics of character writing. All these characters have an inner world, which is what they're like on the inside, and they also have a face that they choose to show to the world. Now with Stellar Blade, Eve doesn't have an inner world. That's really the crux of it, I suppose. Eve is a shell with no personality inside. Now this could actually be a good starting point for a story if, over the course of that story, Eve grew into something more complex than she is at the beginning. And reading about the development of the game, it seems as though this was the intention. The director of the game told Games Radar that, quote, as the game progresses, Eve takes on more and more burdens and comes to make important decisions. She gets to interact with more characters and other people and becomes more human. In the beginning, she's more soldier-like and doesn't have that many emotions or show much expression. As the game and story progresses, you get to see the change in her emotions. And while this is a fine intention, it did not, for whatever reason, actually come across in the final product. Eve does not change over the course of the story. She's pretty much the same person the whole way through, regardless of what happens to her. Even the reveal that everything she thinks she knows about the world is a lie, and that the leader of her society has been manipulating her and everyone she knows, and that she is in fact not a human and is an android, and all the monsters she's been killing are actually the real humans, all that hits her like, what's the opposite of a ton of bricks? A single feather, I suppose. She just goes, oh well, alright, fair enough. May as well carry on and finish the game, I suppose. Then again, even if Eve had some hidden depth to her personality, even if there was something to be drawn out or developed in the course of her interactions with other characters, we would likely never see it, because her main companion is Adam, who is so wooden and boring himself he makes Eve seem like a fucking party clown. It's Adam who controls the little robot that follows Eve around and performs long-range attacks for her in combat, in another heavy nod to Nier Automata, and the vast majority of his dialogue consists of him saying things like, we need to find a way to open that door. And yes, Adam and Eve, literally. And now, hang on, I hear you say, didn't Nier Automata also have two characters called Adam and Eve? It did, yes. Now, our last main character is Lily the Engineer, a character whose design inspired me to Google Stellar Blade Lily alternate outfits and then go and find her something less ridiculous to wear. Lily's character profile does clarify that she is indeed a fully grown individual, which, I think the fact they felt they needed to clarify that is telling in and of itself. As for her character, though, Lily...
That's insane.
While also boring, tends to be more upbeat than the other two and occasionally expresses interest in learning things about the history of the world, and make the most of that, because Lily's occasional interest in non-mission critical information is by far the least boring that any of the three main characters are ever going to be. And as for the non-main characters, good lord, I would suspect that what they call AI was used somewhere in the scripting or translating of the background NPC.
Like with that character, I get it. Like, I don't know how she carries herself, but like the fact that they had to say she's a fully grown human makes it more suspicious. Like, if they hadn't said that, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't play the game that far, so I don't know how fucking, you know, I don't know how she carries herself or shit, but like that makes it way more fucking suspicious, dude. Why'd they have to say that? This is the same thing that like animes do all the time when they're like, remember, this character is 16 years old, okay? If there was ever a moment where you thought this character was like, I don't know, in her early 20s, for example, fear not. I will remind you, the character is 16. Or sometimes, my other favorite thing that they do is when they say, the character is 17, on the verge of her birthday. On the eve of her 18th birthday, the character is actually, you might accidentally think Zelda is actually an 18-year-old of age. Let me remind you, she is not. She is 17.9, and it's like, why did you just not make her 20? This makes no sense. It's either very clear, like, there's no normal here, okay? It's either very clearly a full-grown adult woman that they keep fucking reminding people is actually 16, or very clearly a baby, like an actual goo-goo gaga baby that looks like they're goo-goo gagaing, but then they tell you this is actually a 5,000-year-old dragon and nothing in between. Why?
See dialogue in the game. The main story script at least seems like it's had a glance over by an actual human, but the bulk of the background NPC and side quest dialogue strays into the nonsensical. And that isn't an exaggeration from me there. I mean, it often literally makes no sense whatsoever.
Like, I guess with Zelda, I understand, because like she's not supposed to be sexualized. You can't stop people from doing it regardless. But, you know, the example that I'm referencing remains in every fucking story.
Angel, lovely to meet you.
You don't seem very likable.
All right, you're pretty sharp. Oh, I do like this, Angel. You really are my favorite customer.
Now, I don't want to be too unfair. Writing for video games can be very hard, of course. Thanks to reasons the writers often have no control over, segments of the game can be shifted around or cut entirely, and all of a sudden the story you wrote that made sense previously does not make sense anymore. At this point, you can either do a bunch of rewriting.
I have a cringe admission. This might piss people off. I didn't play Dragon Age Veilguard specifically because I saw a lot of people rail on the fucking cringe Marvel Cinematic Universe writing, and I could not get myself to actually play the game for that reason. I saw it and it was like immediately I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm not touching it. It was better than what we just saw here. I mean, everything is what we just saw here seems like AI wrote it, okay?
Writing, or say sod it and just release the game. And obviously the writers aren't always in control of that process. And playing Stellar Blade
at this stage, all it takes for me to fucking get lasered into orbit is someone going, well, that just happened. If that happens at any point in any game, it could be a fucking 10 out of 10 production. Okay, it could be Sekiro. If I saw that, I'd be like, I'm out. Well, that just happened. Oh my God, it like lasers my mind. It lasers my fucking mind. Same principle with fucking, with the Ryan Reynolds movie, remember? It's a lightsaber, dude. When I see that, I'm like, oh my God. So I just did a thing. He's right behind me, isn't he? I cannot stand those fucking singular bars. I hate it so much. You're such a hater. Dude, I think it's such lazy writing. It's such fucking lazy ass writing, dude. Oh yeah, another one. Oh, that's gonna leave a mark. I hate it so much that I don't even like it when it's like referential in a critical way. Okay, it causes me to immediately think of the product less. Like it causes me to think of the product as like a worse overall product. Yeah, that will hurt in the morning. Another one. Nobody, just me. Okay.
Blade, you can tell that the story makes a priority in development. As a small but telling example here, in one mission, Adam, your usual drone operator, is busy, so his duties are taken over by Lily. She pilots the drone and gives mission support to Eve without comment from either of them about Lily's
another one. Guys, a little help over here?
Piloting of the drone being especially unusual. Now, a little later on, Adam has to be away for another mission, so Lily pipes up and announces that she can pilot the drone in his stead. But this time, this suggestion leads to a conversation about whether or not Lily is able to fill in for Adam and pilot the drone on a mission, which is confusing to the player because you're sitting there thinking, hang on, hasn't Lily already been filling in for Adam when he isn't there? Why are they discussing the feasibility of her doing something that she did with no issue just a couple of hours ago? And I would assume that at some point in development, these two scenes happened in the opposite order to what they do in the finished game, and at some other point they got swapped around and not rewritten, so it just doesn't make sense now. Aside from these sorts of smaller plot holes, the overall story of Stellar Blade suffers from one major flaw, which I'd argue was caused by it choosing to not include the most interesting element of the much better story that it's...
Yeah, Dustmore's dialogue was 90% of all the things was just shat on. I know. And at first it was like kind of funny to make fun of it, and then afterwards it was like unbearable. It started off like, oh, it's so bad it's kind of good, to like, oh, never mind, it's just bad. It turned into never mind, it's just bad. That's it. It's just lazy ass fucking writing. I hate it. I can't stand it. And I just, you know, I don't know.
It's ripping off. And that flaw is the Naytibas, the enemies in the game. They are very boring in a narrative sense. I've recently been streaming the Elden Ring DLC, Shadow of the Erd Tree, and playing that right after Stellar Blade has me notice...
Your haters are insane that they literally created a whole ass website that tried to debunk you. Also, the dude that created the website created a 10-hour video collecting criticism from haters that criticize you. Brother, remember what I said about narrative? Why you hate Jews and like communism? Remember what I said about narrative overcoming truth? There's a lot of people who would rather massage the narrative in a way for people to just never encounter me. Okay, in the wild on their own with a crumb of charitability. That's it. Judge me by my enemies, dude. There's also 11 hours of anti-Hasan vids, mental illness. Yeah. If you don't understand, brother, 11 hours of anti-Hasan videos. Like, am I Adolf Hitler? Like, what are you, fucking insane? I can't think of a single person. I can't even think of an 11-hour hater video on Destiny, you know? Like, that's crazy.
...a lot of points of comparison. One interesting thing was that in certain dungeons in that game, there are enemies which are these stone golem blacksmith things, and also enemies which are these little lava slime things. And in certain places, before they notice you, you can see the golems gently petting the slimes. And it might seem like a small thing, but seeing a golem petting a slime was literally more interesting than everything I ever saw all of the Naytiba enemies do in Stellar Blade put together. From Software has a history of doing things like that. Some enemies will try to run away from you, some seem too depressed to fight you and just sit there unless you attack them first. Some enemies will be fighting each other. There's a big dragon I like in Elden Ring which can no longer stand up and you can just poke it to death from behind, if you're evil. These sorts of things make the world more varied and interesting. They're things that make it seem as though the world would exist whether or not the player was actually in it, and they can cause the player to engage with that world more by prompting them to think about what it is that they're doing.
It has a way to draw you in and make you feel as though you are living in a universe that is alive, whether you're there or not. Cyberpunk did a fantastic job with this as well. Okay. And From Software games does this all the time. I would go so far as to say the most annoying part about From Software games is that it literally just does exist without you recognizing it. And it's fucking annoying because, like, if you don't seek it out, you're just gonna miss it, you know? And many people do miss so much of it. They don't even like attempt to lead you in that direction so you can see it. But I guess that's also what makes it beautiful and amazing. Yeah, RDR2, great example of a living, breathing world. Probably the best example of a living, breathing world, as a matter of fact. RDR2 might be the greatest example of it, like more so than Skyrim, Oblivion, all of that. More so than Bethesda. I think it's just crazy. You RDR2 dude, no. That's crazy. I'm sorry. That is goated. RDR2 is fucking goated, dude. It is the best example. Like, you want to patch that fucking game? End the first chapter. Eliminate it in its entirety. No more, and also eliminate all the fucking hand-holding that has to exist. Eliminate all the hand-holding that has to exist in every fucking mission where you're like, this is a beautiful universe and you have to take it in at every fucking step of the way. It's like, I don't like it. I don't like that. I think it's annoying. It's tedious. It's boring. kills the replayability. Having said that, however, the world is damn near perfect.
The golems petting the slimes, or this hollow chilling out on a ledge in Dark Souls, those moments make those enemies more than just mindless monsters to be defeated in combat.
Is he petting that? Dude, is he petting a slime? Buddy, he's petting it. I can't kill this man. He has a pet.
Now, I'm not saying this is necessarily the right way to do things, to be clear. Everything I'm saying right now is dependent upon the type of game that's being made and what the creators want the player's relationship to its enemies to be. You can have a game with mindless inhuman enemies if you want, that's fine, but Stellar Blade, in its cutscenes and in its dialogue, is trying to ask questions about what it means to be human, so it seems like a big missed opportunity to have all the enemies in the game act so relentlessly inhuman. The reveal that the Naytibas were indeed once humans is treated as though it is important, as though you're supposed to have some thoughts or feelings about it. But the fact that every regular Naytiba enemy you meet is mindlessly aggressive and has no personality really undercuts the twist, because all the Naytibas do is immediately try to bash your head in.
Elden Ring seems like a bad example of that. It's hardly a living, breathing world. If you don't think Elden Ring is a living, breathing world, you haven't paid attention. Especially for the type of game it is, because it's not like a narrative focused game, obviously. Many people don't even, I would say that the majority of people that finish Elden Ring don't even understand the narrative. I myself don't even fully understand the narrative. Okay? But in spite of that, in spite of the lack of focus on the story on in and of itself, it very clearly is a world that is alive with or without you in it. And I mean, I think Shaun did a great example. Shaun demonstrated it with a great example. I think the only reason why people don't understand that Elden Ring and many From Software games have a living, breathing world is because From Software will never, even at gunpoint, never put guardrails on their fucking narrative. Ever. Okay? They will literally, you could kill them. They're barely going to put a fucking map in there. Okay? Talk for yourself, bitch. I watched around 30 hours worth of Elden Ring lore videos just to come out with more questions. Bloodborne was my first interaction with From Software, and I was immediately captivated by it. I could not understand that so much of the lore was densely packed into item descriptions. Okay? I never thought that I didn't say Bloodworm, I said Bloodborne. Did I say, you guys heard Bloodworm? I said Bloodborne. Anyway, I never thought that I would have to read endless hours of FAQs to basically, like endless hours of walkthroughs to basically figure out how to play the game right. And it was awesome.
And I've never seen them do anything else, so who cares? You know, whether they are actually alien invaders or they are former humans, it doesn't actually matter, right? As regards you fighting them anyway. All they try to do is kill you, so whatever. It's as though Stellar Blade is expecting me to care about the concept of humanity in an exclusively biological sense, rather than in the sense of the qualities that make...
If you have to watch YouTube videos to understand a game story, the game failed. I disagree. I mean, I think it's the maxed out version. It's the maxed out version of show, don't tell. It's not even show, don't tell, actually. It's basically don't show, don't tell, make people search it, make people seek it out. Genuinely, this is a symptom of Marble brain for a decade.
Make one a human. That the Naytibas were once biologically human is not really that meaningful if they don't have the ability to express the qualities of humanity. To imagine a different story, what if in Android who had been indoctrinated with a bunch of lies about how Naytibas are all mindless alien monsters who need to be exterminated, and you get sent to Earth to do that, and then you start seeing Naytibas who are not like that, maybe doing things that mindless monsters shouldn't be doing, like communicating or forming factions.
Marvel hate jerk is strong? Yes, because it's bubblegum, dude. You can just sit through it without ever having a new thought, a unique emotion ever. Okay? And there's a place for that. There is a place for that. It's great. I'm not discounting it, okay? But if every piece of content turns into that, then it sucks. It sucks.
Maybe not immediately attacking you always, which is, of course, the plot of Nier Automata again, isn't it? In that game, your main enemies are the machines, who you start out believing are all mindless killbots programmed to fight you and nothing more, but then they start talking and acting scared of you. And the two android characters, 2B and 9S, have to reassure each other that the machines do not have minds or personalities, that they're just saying random words, that they don't have feelings, so you don't have to worry about killing them. But of course...
For the record, I do want to point to something that a chatter said. That's why a chatter made a cyberpunk take. There's nothing in Cyberpunk 2077 that informs you Johnny is an unreliable narrator, but it's flavor if you take a deeper dive into the lore medium between Marvel and Elden Ring. One of my greatest game takes of all time is that Cyberpunk 2077 if playable, which I was very fortunate, it was playable for me, is one of the fucking best video games, okay? It had a shit ton of issues, but it had everything that I wanted in a video game. Everything that I wanted in a video game, okay? Old school, narrative focused, incredible story, incredible world building, incredible world in general, okay? And I said that at the time. Some people yelled at me. I played it to the bone. Yes, I finished the DLC as well. It was fan-fucking-tastic, okay? It was fan-fucking-tastic. And I think it's one of my best takes because they went back. It's the greatest thing that Poland has ever done, okay? They went back to the game. They fixed it. They made it playable. They fixed all of the issues after years and years and years of working on it. And I'm so glad that like people have gone back into that universe, dove back into it, and realized how fucking amazing it was. They saw what I saw in the game. Okay. Moon just played it and rated it a 9.9. Yeah. It is a perfect game. It is a perfect game. Even when it was imperfect and even when it was fundamentally broken, I could see exactly what the game was supposed to look like if given a little bit more time to ferment. Okay. Oh, so fucking good. So many options, so many pathways, so many parts of the lore that are just like that left me wanting more. You know what I mean? It left me wanting to play more of it. I wanted to dive further into the normal corpo life, like normal existence of being a corpo. You know what I mean? Yeah, it did need a little bit more polish.
Some of the machines have developed feelings and personalities, and you go on to meet whole societies of machines who are emulating human philosophy and politics and religion. And this recontextualizes both the characters and the player's relationship with the enemies in the game.
I did play the DLC, chat.
You don't always
about?
have to kill them. And when they do try to fight you, it isn't always out of some mindless antagonism. Sometimes they fight you because they're scared of you, or out of religious fanaticism, or in defense of a society that they see you as a threat to. And all this plays into the twist with the humans being gone, of course, because while humanity, the biological beings, might be gone, humanity, the concept, is everywhere. And if that's the case, what does it mean for our characters to be fighting on behalf of humanity when their enemies are often acting more human than they are? Stellar Blade is like Nier Automata if the mindless killbots really were mindless killbots and never had anything interesting going on. And now you might say, Shaun, are you really going to criticize Stellar Blade for copying so many things from Nier Automata, but also criticize it for not copying more? And I am, yes. If they're already copying so much, they should have just gone all in and copied this bit as well, because it's the most interesting bit. Outside of the main story, there are various side quests in Stellar Blade, and while a few are kind of interesting, most are unfortunately of the go to this place you were before and get me a thing variety. Nothing about the area you're sent back to changes or updates on these fetch quests, they're literally just busy work to pad the game's runtime. For example, an NPC in Zion called Barry asks you to get him some bottles of wine from a shop located in a ruined city that you'd visited previously. Now, because the game's fast travel system is area specific, getting back to that city involves heading to the nearest phone, fast traveling to your ship, talking to Adam to select a leave, picking your destination from a list, going to a phone at that location, fast traveling to the point
Starfield
nearest the shop, running to the shop, getting the bottles of wine, and then teleporting back to Barry. Now, if you think that sounds boring, then just you wait. Completing Barry's wine quest unlocks another quest where another resident of Zion says that they saw Barry had some wine, and now they too would like some wine. So can you please go and get them some wine? Now, where is this wine located? Well, in the exact same place you just got the wine for Barry, of course. So back to the phone, back to the ship, back to the city, back to the next phone, run to the shop again, pick up the wine again, deliver the wine. The exact same
Starfield's best fucking quests were not the main line. Okay, as always, classic Bethesda. I'll stand by that. Like the war, the war that you wage between the factions as you have like a full blown choice of whether you can whether you can align yourself with the Crimson Fleet or the fucking Navy or whatever, like that is literally better. Like that's 10x better than the actual mainline quest. The mainline quest sucked so much ass.
Thing you just did all over again. Stellar Blade's level design is, well, it's kind of a blast from the past, I guess you could call it. The game is divided into linear corridor levels and 2 large open areas. Multiple of the linear levels contain claustrophobic sections set in sewers and other enclosed areas, and the 2 more open zones, the desert and the wasteland, are, as you can imagine from the names, sparse stretches of terrain without much interesting going on really. In a bygone era, you might chalk this sort of thing up to technical limitations, ones that shouldn't really exist on the PS5. I guess it's nostalgic level design, if nothing else. I actually have a theory that a lot of the elements of Stellar Blade poked gamers of a certain age right in their nostalgia zones. The game reminds me a lot of a certain type of anime-inspired hack-and-slash game from the early 2000s that got praised for its flashy combat animations but criticised for its weak story and characters. But also, who really cares about that, because you're clearly not here for the story or characters, are you? Something like Chaos Legion or Bujingai, The Forsaken City. You know, games that nobody has thought about for 20 years. But I know there's some people watching this video who are seeing this gameplay and saying, oh, I think I remember playing that on the PlayStation 2 when I was like 10. Stellar Blade is at its core just one of these. It's like one of these games got put in a time capsule 2 decades ago and then they unearthed and released it today. Now, to clarify, Stellar Blade is not the worst game in the world by any means, and it's not some huge crime for a video game to be a bit mediocre. Not every game can be the best game ever made, can it? But on the other hand, it is certainly not going to be this big cultural reset industry shift moment that the Gamergate remnants seem to expect it to be. It's just not that good. Ultimately, I'd say Stellar Blade is less than the sum of its parts. A lot of those parts are fine in isolation, it just never really comes together to form anything all that interesting. To use a cliché food metaphor, it's the difference between a meal and a bunch of uncooked ingredients. And Eve's character design is just another of those uncooked ingredients, I'm afraid. I've got no big problem with Eve's design myself, in a vacuum, but like a lot of the other elements of the game, it feels very arbitrary. One of the questions I had when deciding to play through Stellar Blade was, does it ever matter what Eve looks like or is dressed like in terms of either her character or the story she's in? And after having played it, I can say that the answer is no. What Eve looks like never really matters in the universe of the game. She doesn't know that she looks like this, and it doesn't suit what little there is of her personality for her to look like this. Eve is straightforward, serious, mission-focused. She's never flirtatious or irreverent, so she wouldn't be getting dressed in a bikini to go into battle, obviously. Ditto for the other female characters in the game. They don't know that they look how they look, and how they look never matters. And this lack of connection between how...
Like, even that alone, a lot of people were mad at Hideo Kojima for being a gooner with Quiet, but, like, there was at least some kind of, like, tongue-in-cheek story reason for it, right? Like, it's a fully flushed out game. That's the difference.
How the characters look and how the characters act feels like another outdated element of Stellar Blade. I recently played the second part of the Final Fantasy VII remake, and in that game the characters travel to a resort town and go to the beach, and since they're at the beach they dress in swimwear, and the game uses that occasion to show you some character interactions. Cloud gets flustered when he sees the ladies, Barrett gets embarrassed wearing his sailor suit, Tifa and Aerith ask Red how they look, and in trying to compliment them he compares them to animals, because he's an animal and he doesn't understand how human beauty works. Again, not saying it's Shakespeare necessarily, but how the characters look and are dressed at least exists as a thing that is acknowledged and could matter within the universe.
Literally bare minimum, by the way.
Of the game. How the characters are dressed is being used as a way to show the audience more about them.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid 5 was not fully fleshed out. I know, chat. What, you think I don't fucking know that? I'm the #1 Kojimbo dick rider. And even then, a non-fleshed out forced video game that ends up literally having a second act that is a copy paste of the first one is still infinitely better than this. Well, not this, but infinitely better than Stellar Blade. That's the point.
Their personalities. And I hadn't really thought about it, but I suppose at some point I got used to games that allow you to change outfits, acknowledging what you're wearing in some way. In Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, for example, characters will react to the different outfits Link wears, as well as if he talks to them while only in his underwear. And there's also certain places in the game world that Link can only access if he's wearing certain outfits. NPCs will comment on the armor set you're wearing, or tell you to put some clothes on if you walk around naked. It might not seem like much, but all this helps build the sense of the characters actually existing physically in the game world as people who can see one another, and not just as names interacting in a script. And a lack of this sort of consideration can work the other way, of course. For instance, in Stellar Blade, there's a character called Kaya who looks like she should be playing the monster in a horror movie about a haunted sex doll that murders pedophiles. Kaya runs a store called Sister's Chunk, a name I was surprised to find out is not an intentional joke, and she tasks Eve with finding her sister, who's gone missing out in the desert. The sister is almost certainly dead, but Kaya maintains a childlike insistence that she's sure her sister is somehow alive. Eve goes looking for the sister, and when you find her, she is dead, oh no. Eve then has to explain to a child that her sister was killed and is never going to come home, and then attempt to console said child while dressed like this. Now, okay, to be fair, I dressed Eve like this on purpose for this mission because I thought it would be the funniest outfit to wear while breaking the news to Kaya that her sister was dead. But still, it's not like the majority of Eve's outfits are much more appropriate, is it? Stellar Blade isn't a purposefully funny game. It doesn't have a goofy or silly tone. It's most often expecting the player to take what's happening in the story rather seriously, and Eve's skimpy costumes pretty much always clash with this expectation. Now, there's a range of justifications for skimpy costumes in video games, of course. We've already mentioned Bayonetta today, and that game does have a camp, silly tone. Bayonetta isn't expecting you to take it all that seriously, and notably, Bayonetta, the character, knows that she looks like that. Her sexualization is, within the universe of the game at least, deliberate and something that is under her control. In Nier Automata, 2B's design, as well as the designs of the other androids, have been both praised and criticised. I happen to like the android designs in Nier Automata, mainly because I think they play into the twist in that game very well. The androids look like these particular idealized versions of humans.
Yeah, he likes it because he's horny. I mean, that's it. And there ain't nothing wrong with that, King.
Which contrasts them very sharply with the tin can looking machine enemies, and that makes it all the more surprising when the game flips the script and has you empathizing with the tin cans, often over the androids. The androids might look like humans, but it's the tin can machines talking about human concepts like love and reproduction and raising young, and there's an early game machine boss which is obsessed with looks and making herself more beautiful. It's a fun reversal of what you might expect just looking at the character designs. Of course, as well as the more defensible instances of skimpy outfits in games, we also have the ones at the bottom end of the scale. Now, one of these for me is Quiet from Metal Gear Solid 5.
You better not be fucking coming after Kojimbo, dude.
The silent and nearly naked sniper lady who goes out of her way to awkwardly shove her ass in your face when you're riding in the helicopter with her like she's a cat in heat or something. Although Hideo Kojima made a memorable assurance that Quiet's design made perfect sense, this turned out to be a rather arbitrary need for her to photosynthesize.
But once you recognize the secret reason for her exposure, you will be ashamed. You will feel ashamed of your word and deeds.
Like a plant, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because Kojima already used the photosynthesis trait for the old sniper man in Metal Gear Solid 3, and he just wore clothes. Commit to the bit, you coward, and show me a 100-year-old man in a bikini. Of course, it is up to your own judgment what you think is sufficient justification for any particular character outfit or design, and if you're happy to accept actually she has to be naked because she caught clothes fall off disease, then that's up to you, honestly. I'm not going to argue with you. So where does Eve fall on this scale? Well, with Eve, there's no real attempt to ever justify or even address at all how she looks. Eve herself is a sexless character, who exists in a largely sexless world. What she looks like is arbitrary. Eve's character design is almost completely divorced from any other aspect of the game. And not to get ahead of myself here, but I would argue that this lack of explanation for Eve to look the way she does is kind of the whole point. And to explain what I mean here, we can start out by looking at another tweet from Mark Kern. If you look at AAA gaming, beautiful women are the most marginalized and unrepresented segment of the market, he says, before posting a collage of video game characters that he considers to be too ugly. A collage which includes...
I think one of the funniest aspects of this is that Grumps himself is like a horrifyingly ugly man who also happens to be a video game developer, or used to be. I don't think you can call him that now. And that is precisely what is so funny about this, where he's always like, oh, these ugly ass video game developers are making ugly ass characters. It's like, bro, have you seen yourself?
It's a character from Wolfenstein, Billy, who is an actual child. So Grums, Mark Kern, is here complaining about the lack of beautiful, sexy children in video games. He would like to see more of that, apparently. Very brief tangent here, but internet dickhead Dr. Disrespect recently got into some hot water due to allegations he was exchanging inappropriate messages with underage fans via a Twitch chat app, which was later revealed to, allegedly, again, be the reason he was banned from Twitch in 2020. In the wake of these allegations, Mark Kern shared a conspiracy theory on Twitter that Twitch had intentionally baited Dr. Disrespect by impersonating a minor in order to trick him into doing something they could use as a justification to ban him. Which, for one thing...
Isn't that the entire basis of, like, the pedo hunters, by the way? That's obviously not what happened, but it's, like, crazy that he's like, oh, dude, they baited him. They baited him by behaving like a minor. Like, that's just what fucking, Chris Hansen does. Isn't that? Oh my God. Oh, dude. Oh God. This man is like 56 years old, by the way, which is holy fuck. It makes it so much sadder.
I'm not sure why Twitch would engage in a conspiracy to fabricate a reason to ban one of their biggest streamers, but even if they did, I'm not sure it would be all that exonerating, would it? What sort of person can be, quote, baited by someone impersonating a minor on the internet? Or indeed, what sort of person would even describe such a thing as bait? I'm not saying anything. I'm not making any allegations. Anyway, tangent over, back to this silly internet post. Firstly, of course, this is an example of cherry picking, isn't it? We've already talked about the ladies from the Final Fantasy VII Remake today, for instance, one of the biggest games of the year. But I know the response will come. That's a game from Japan, isn't it? They haven't fully caught the woke mind virus over there yet. These are all examples from Western game companies. To which I'd respond first, Mark Kern didn't say Western, he just said AAA, so nah. But also, this is just another example of cherry picking. We've already talked about Baldur's Gate 3 today, for example, with everything going on in that game, and that was made by a Belgian company. And the Witcher series, for instance, has an array of conventionally, or even more than conventionally, I think in-universe, sometimes magically beautiful women with romance.
There's also a shit ton of American games, like Western, at the heart of Western creation, that have like sexy ass characters in it. It's very stupid.
Plots and sex scenes and whatever else, and that's made by a Polish.
And there's also disfigured, horrifying monsters in Japanese games.
company.
Like, what are we talking about?
These are games made by Western game developers that make Stellar Blade look tame by comparison. They have romance and nudity and on-screen sex and whatever else. Stellar Blade doesn't have any of that. Anyway, the cherry picking in this image even extends down to the individual characters. For instance, taking a still from a stylized animated trailer featuring Apex Legends Lifeline rather than showing her in-game character model. Many of the characters also just are unarguably conventionally attractive. I guess Senua from Senua's Sacrifice made it on here because she's shouting. I have no idea what Jessie from Control is doing here, and I have a lumbering suspicion that many of these characters ended up on here simply for not being white. I mean, Billy Lurk from Death of the Outsider just looks like a fashion model or something in that picture. There's an obvious point about appropriateness in character design to be made here. Xenia from Assassin's Creed looks like an imposing pirate captain because she is. This other character from Rage 2, who I suspect also made it into the collage just because she's shouting, looks like some sort of post-apocalyptic Mad Max-style bandit because she is. You know, these characters look like what they are. The now classic example of appropriateness in video game character design is this Twitter post from 2021 complaining about Sony's apparently masculine-looking female protagonists. Pick from the game on the left, fan made on the right. Higher fans lol, says the poster. The picture on the left shows Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn, and the picture on the right shows an Uncanny Valley Photoshop job of Aloy with a full face of makeup and perfect teeth. So for those who don't know, Horizon Zero Dawn is set on a post-apocalyptic Earth where all
Hire this man, please.
modern human civilization has been destroyed, meaning it would be extremely bizarre for Aloy to look like she does on the right there. You know, she's a hunter who lives in a mountain.
I do think when this shit was popping off, I did think that this was like actually a very resilient, overt example of porn addiction. I think like these guys are coon brained. Like I think they actually do have porn brain. Guy watching Zone of Interest being like, why are the characters not fucking sexy, dude? What the fuck? Why are the fucking Nazis not hot?
Mountain tribe. The original image here was made as a joke on Reddit, actually. It was intended to mock the sorts of people who then went on to take it seriously and say they thought it was good design. And I am interested in why someone would prefer the design on the right there, I confess, because it seems to me to be completely ridiculous, right? I logged on to nexusmods.com, which is a website that hosts mods for various video games, and I took a look at some of the popular entries for Horizon Zero Dawn, and what I found were mods to fix Aloy's face.
One of the main Gamergate narratives is that Western games do not have any sexy characters. Yeah, I don't want to say what I truly think you should do to yourself if that's like your, number one concern, because I think only time will sort that problem out. But honestly, please step away from the ledge. Like if this is a real galvanizing force for you, okay, you have to fix your life immediately.
Give her whiter teeth, make her outfits more revealing, or even outright remove her clothing altogether. Now, I confess I thought it would be more difficult to find these sorts of mods in the list, but they're some of the most popular ones there. If you search by the most downloaded mods of
like the nude mods and shit, that actually is classic. Gamers have been doing that in perpetuity, okay? They've been doing that forever. It's still weird, but they've been doing that.
all time, Aloy explicit outfit.
I just don't understand, like, why don't you just, why don't you just go jerk off? I don't get it.
It's Aloy nude mod and Aloy explicit outfits too are all there, and they're hundreds of thousands of times altogether. Unless you think this is just random base smut, Aloy explicit outfits comes with a small passage of fanfiction justifying itself, and I quote, "Story thus far. When Aloy was an outcast, she had trouble finding all materials for crafting her outfits. Even after she began adventuring, that curse lingered on. So whenever Aloy gets a new outfit, parts are often missing, explicitly showing her nude body. Oh well, what can Aloy do but continue on?" That's a narrative justification for nudity worthy of Hideo Kojima there. So, what's the point of fixing Aloy's appearance by changing her face, giving her makeup and skimpy outfits and so on? I'm going to go ahead and make the assumption it's not because they believe it makes any sense from a narrative or character perspective for Aloy to be walking around talking to people with their kit off. And the latest version of this fixing of female characters' appearances is even worse. They're even doing it to Angela from the Silent Hill 2 remake, a character who is a teenager traumatized by a lifetime of physical and sexual abuse. You know, it's not just nonsensical in this example, it actually runs totally counter to the text of the game. The root cause of this expressed desire for all women in games to look like bikini models, regardless of if it makes sense or not, is usually suggested to be simple mindless horniness, right? Juvenile masturbators who want all media to resemble pornography all the time. People say, oh, you must be playing one-handed, not every woman has to be designed to give you an erection, things like that. But I think this is oversimplifying it a little. Discounting any hypothetical, actually mindlessly horny.
Yeah, I mean, it's mindless horniness, but it's also about controlling women and desperately trying to claw back this forgotten time that they've created in their minds where like women were dominated. And that's what it is. It's about enforcing your will upon those who have wronged you. A lot of these guys have had their brains broken, okay? They've gotten their brains broken, and they personally believe that like women are responsible for all of the wrongs in their experience, all the wrongs in their immediate development. And they have to engage on a path of vengeance. It's vindictive. They must dominate. They must control women's bodies. They must force women to be an object of their sexual desires.
Horny people who really are objectifying these characters for the purposes of sexual gratification. There is a stone cold sober unhorny objective here for the rest of the sad gamer men. And what it's really about for them is two things, I'd argue. It's about nostalgia and control. I got thinking about these mods because with their arbitrary, seemingly nonsensical objectification, they remind me of Stellar Blade, of course. A mod that makes it so Aloy is running around the snowy mountains in a swimsuit makes about as much sense as many of Eve's outfits in Stellar Blade. And the fact that it does not make sense is important, as I said before, because it signals and amplifies the objectification of the character. The less sense it makes for a particular character to be presented in that way, like if there is nothing in their character or the story that justifies it, the more clear it is that the only reason they are being presented in that way is to appeal to a particular audience. The objectification functions as a sign above the door that says, this was made for you. You are the assumed default audience here. And this is really the desire of the regressive gamer boys, to once again be the assumed default audience for video games. They don't want to have their own desires portrayed as merely one option among many, they want their own desires to be the default, like it was in the past. More traditional conservatives might complain about having to press a button to select their own language on a telephone, and what we've been talking about today follows a similar logic. The rose-tinted past that the Gamergate crowd are nostalgic for is one in which all gamers were assumed to be straight men, and if women were there at all, it was to take their clothes off. There's a close association between young cis-het men being the assumed default video game audience and the objectification of women in games, one with roots not just in how many video games used to be designed, but also how they were advertised and talked about in the gaming press. If you're of a certain age, you might remember the way video game magazines used to be, assuming all gamers are straight men and women are sex objects used to advertise the games. Video games and other nerdy hobbies are sometimes seen as an escape from a misogynist, toxic masculinity for sensitive boys who are above that sort of thing, but that's not always the case, is it? Nerdy hobbies can be every bit as objectifying and exclusionary as any others. A lot of this sort of advertising portrays games not as an escape from traditional masculinity, but as another avenue to reaching it. Play this game to get the girl, to be a tough guy, to prove you're not gay or whatever. I don't know how much I'd commit to saying the roots of Gamergate were in this sort of environment, but at least one root was probably dangling somewhere nearby. This era is what the Gamergate crowd see as the goal.
God, Duke Nukem was such a dumbass game, bro. God damn, Duke Nukem.
Golden Age. This is what they want to return to. So I would argue that the point of fixing female characters' appearance
I'm so fucking old.
To make them more objectified is much less about the simple desire to see a sexy lady, and more about changing the products those characters feature in into something that appears to have been designed as if they were the exclusive audience. What they want is to be pandered to. Objectification is just the way they see that pandering being conveyed, and if the developers choose not to pander to them by objectifying their female characters, they have to fix it. So it's less about jacking off and more about trying to transport themselves back in time to when games were just for them and Crash Bandicoot had 4 sexy girlfriends. Now if all this sounds like a bold claim, let me see if I can justify it with another example. You see, running alongside this very one-sided discourse cycle about Stellar Blade were various other one-sided discourse cycles related to Supergiant Games' early access release of Hades 2, which came out in May of this year. This is the sequel to Hades, which came out in 2020,
which is literally the most bisexual game. Hades did a lot for bisexual visibility and bisexual representation, I think. Like, bisexuals were on top when Hades came out, and then Kirsten Cinema ruined it.
Which is an absolutely excellent roguelike action game with a brilliant story and characters and character designs. I really like Hades. It's one of the best games I've played in the last few years, and I'm very excited about the full release of Hades 2 when that comes out. If you've not played Hades, go and give it a go. Now, for those who don't know, Hades is a story set in the underworld of Greek mythology, and as such, Greek gods and mythological figures make up the cast of characters. The early access release of Hades 2 introduced some previously unseen characters to the cast, as well as showing some updated character designs for the returning characters. Of course, the fake Outrage clickbait merchants on YouTube watch every new game release like a hawk, looking to see if they can brand a game either woke or anti-woke to get a desperate little discourse cycle out of it. And let's look at a few they managed to toss off for Hades 2. So first up is Hephaestus.
This time around, the game doesn't only promote gender ideology, it also goes out of its way to promote racial and body diversity as well. I mean, why would a god be in a wheelchair?
Yes, because I'm sure gods are just fat, frumpy weirdos who can't fucking walk and have to travel around in wheelchairs, even though they can control anything about anyone. They have to be in wheelchairs because they can't walk. Yes, I'm sure that makes perfect sense in your absolute small brain, low IQ head of yours. I'm sure.
Yeah, only high IQ people have high enough IQ to be like, I saw a character in a fucking wheelchair, and that actually made me very frustrated. I will not look into the actual fucking Greek mythology and the canonical reasons as to why this character is actually in a wheelchair. I will instead talk about how high IQ I am. The higher IQ I am, the more I shit on people in wheelchairs.
Or he does.
But the wheelchair? He's a god. Hephaestus is a god. Why is he in a wheelchair?
So much of this is just stupidity, by the way. Like, so much of this is just Dunning-Kruger being fucking stupid and creating a hug box where, like, there are enough stupid people around you so it doesn't fucking matter that you're stupid. No one checks you in this situation. And if you are laser focused on this style of content and there's a steady flow of garbage coming out always, you won't even accidentally encounter Shaun's video or even someone like myself who would be like, what are you talking about? That is the problem. There are so many people who are just like confident in their rhetoric and incredibly dumb. And plenty of other incredibly dumb people tune into that to feel good.
Wheelchair.
But these are some of the characters here, and obviously all of the games journalists are soy-facing over this because of the fact that now they have a Greek god in a wheelchair. I'm really glad to see everybody pretty much calling this shit out and saying how fucking ridiculous this is.
So yes, Supergiant Games had the temerity, the gall, to put a god in a wheelchair. What sort of a god would need to be in a wheelchair? Now this video is long enough already, so I'll try not to belabor.
Like, all you needed to do was just Google it, man. To be like, Like, even if they actually put a god in a wheelchair and it wasn't like canonically accurate, why are you so fucking bent? That's the question. But also, once again, you don't even need to ask that question because there is a canonical reason for it. Okay? But because you're so laser focused on DEI narratives that you look at the most bisexual, diverse game of all time and its second version of it and immediately laser focus on DEI. They're Greek gods, man. They're gay as fuck. What are you talking about? Why are there so many examples of this where there are so easily dismissible criticisms? Just one fucking second of Google would allow you to immediately understand that maybe I'm being primed in this direction for no reason. That's what frustrates me the most. Aside from the bigotry, the endless well of bigotry that people are tapping into, okay, which is very frustrating in and of itself. It's actually the stupidity because it spells trouble for the future prospects of this country and the world in general, okay? It's just no one fucking cares about the truth. No one cares about intention. No one cares about nuance. No one cares about context. No one cares. It feels like people would rather feel comfortable in their hug box and in their preconceived notions without ever even demonstrating a fraction of intellectual curiosity. I hate it. I'm not saying you should be debunking everything, okay? But like this is a telltale sign of our own willful ignorance, our own our society getting stupider and fucking stupider year over year. I hate that. I actually fucking hate how dumb people are. This is how I feel about my parents. I hate how dumb people are, and I hate how confident they are in their stupidity.
Labour the point, but firstly, Hephaestus is the ancient Greek god of blacksmiths, carpenters, craftsmen, and the likes. He makes things, basically. He's also described as limping on account of having a lame leg, which in different tellings either caused him to be cast.
You could do this about, I'm sorry, because Asmongold is just basically repeating everything that he gets from his subreddit, who is, you know, and the subreddit is filled to the brim with like a bunch of people who just follow Grums and all these other fucking dumbasses. You could do this about every single Asmongold video, pretty much. It's just like incredibly easy to Google shit. It's like bottom of the barrel, incredibly easy to Google shit that would destroy this fucking narrative in a fraction of a second. And yet, seemingly, no one fucking cares. And when faced with the reality, okay, when faced with that reality that like people are wrong, no one even goes, oh shit, maybe I got duped. At least back in the day, I feel like people would go, oh man, I think I got duped here. Here, I'll give you an example. Dr. Mike Israetel, he is at the very least a skeptical person, right? I think this was on camera when he asked me about AOC changing her description on her Twitter. If you recall, he was like, so let me ask you something. Did you see the AOC thing? And I was like, I knew exactly where it was going. And I said, oh, did you see the AOC thing where she took off her pronouns from her bio? Did I get duped on that? Or was that a thing that happened? And I said, no, she had actually changed her description a couple years ago, but people actually fucking ran with that narrative as though it was recent. And like there are multiple different ways of tackling that, but at least like Dr. Mike Israetel had a healthy dose of skepticism there, even though he had seen a narrative online being repeated over and over again. He at least was like, one, able to see through it and had like some degree of skepticism that he demonstrated. And also, he very quickly went, oh, okay, I guess I was duped on that. People have completely lost the plot. Most people don't do that, okay? Most people do not do that. Most people don't come at it with like, am I being duped by this thing that I saw, this prevailing narrative online, okay? That's all you need for a lot of people. If you want to bring them back to like reality, that's all you need to do. Okay? And it's ironic because these are the same people that say like common sense is no longer commonplace. Common sense not so common. And yet when faced with a world-altering reality, a cold hard dose of truth, they just double down and go, nah, fuck you. When you say that most people, do you mean most people online are in reality? Unfortunately, as time goes on, online is becoming reality. It has the capacity to change and alter the way you see reality. It's very frustrating. We need to still maintain skepticism. You say that, but when people like Asmon make a dumbass video like the one Hades, it gets 2 million views and that's the narrative, even if it's not real. I know. And it's very frustrating to me. Not because like, it's frustrating to me twofold, okay? It's frustrating to me for two different reasons, okay? It's frustrating because on the one hand, well, like you got shit like this. Time for a spicy one. Hades and Hades 2 definitely has woke elements. However, aren't we the side that just wants to see good games that are also non-predatory? These games are fucking awesome. It's always been, if the game is good, I don't really care exactly. Usually it's bad because the woke is getting in the way of making it good, and usually characters are, oh, they're so close. They're so fucking close. They're so close. Supergiant makes good games, and to my knowledge, while they might pander to games journals with the inclusivity stuff, oh, they're so close. But the point I was going to make is this, okay? It's not necessarily that when Asmongold does like a YouTube video about Hades and how fucking woke Hades is or whatever the fuck, okay? And how woke Hades is ultimately, okay? And how many views it garners. What's frustrating is people don't personally recognize that that like there is an answer to these questions. Okay? There's an answer to these questions, and yet people do not care about the truth. People do not care about like why people make these decisions. And it makes me so mad because you can't convince people that are primed into believing a certain thing.
So
here, we watched it when this happened. The Adpocalypse was a great example of this. It was a month-long smear campaign created by a group of people that were butthurt that they were banned from the fucking platform. Okay? Directed by like a person that was butthurt that they were banned from the platform, who's, you know, say unimaginably, ruthlessly toxic shit on a regular fucking basis. And then they went to advertisers. They mass spammed advertisers. It didn't work, but it didn't matter. Even when it didn't work, people were still running along with the Adpocalypse narratives. Okay? Look at this. Ludwig will protect his girlfriend, Hasan. I like how Ludwig goes over Hasan a few seconds like he isn't 95% of the reason. Issue with Ludwig is the vanilla fence sitter. Like they move on to the next thing instead of addressing the issue head on and maybe recognizing that like, yeah, I guess we were wrong. I guess like the Adpocalypse didn't actually happen. It doesn't matter. We'll find another thing to get mad at in the process. And the thing that they got mad at was like Ludwig protecting his girlfriend Hasan. I didn't even know he had made this video, right? Every new talking point in this process is yet another point of misinformation that now has to be addressed. I saw someone blame you for allowing Ludwig to stream a fucking fighting game tournament earlier on Twitch, completely unrelated to anything on screen. Yeah, all it took was for Pirate Software saying it's not happening, and then one by one they were like, oh, moving on. No apology or admitting they were wrong. They just moved on. Exactly. And it's just, it's sad. It's a sad state of affairs. And I don't just say this because I'm like very commonly placed as the, you know, I'm very commonly in the crosshairs of this kind of mobilization, because a lot of these dumbasses end up portraying me as the villain of their world, right? I represent everything that they fucking hate and despise. But I want these people to be happy, okay? And constantly feeding into this cycle of despair and depravity is not going to make you happy, okay? You are just losing your humanity in the process. And not only are you losing your humanity in the process, you're also just like living in an alternative plane of existence. And it's very fucking annoying. Like, look at this. Ludwig dropped a DEI complaints, LMFAO. Ludwig basically a liquid from how much spine he doesn't have. Like, everyone's just like shitting on fucking Ludwig. What the fuck did he do? He's basically done nothing, you know? Northern Line had a great take on it.
We got grown adults that are when the VTuber is like singing a song, they're like typing the lyrics in chat, even though they have like their telomeres are shortening, right? Now, I would never.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember this. Yeah, he was just talking about, like, why do you fucking give a shit about Apocalypse? Like, you're a watcher of the content.
Off Mount Olympus, or was caused by injuries he sustained in being cast off Mount Olympus. So Hephaestus has a disability, canonically, in the ancient Greek sources. But he's a god, you might say. Can't he just fix it with magic god?
I don't see Hasan as a villain, but I do sometimes see him enabling and coddling the woke. When there are valid criticisms of some people just being lazy writers or trying to push niche messaging, but most of the time I agree with them. No. The Hades devs literally could have put Hephaestus on a donkey as shown here, but they went for the low-hanging symbolism, which is what they do all the time, and then get mad when people call them out for it. Brother, you are actually very easy to fucking pull off this ledge, so I'm going to be as charitable as I possibly can here, okay? Putting Hephaestus in a fucking wheelchair, which I'm sure Shaun is going to explain now, in this circumstance isn't fucking low-hanging fruit at all. What are you talking about? He already is a blacksmith. Why the fuck wouldn't he invent a way for him to move around? What are you talking about? It's not low-hanging symbolism. You've just been primed into thinking that it's low-hanging symbolism. Okay, low-hanging fruit symbolism. Do you understand? They reinvented it. The donkey was canon. You're dumb. They're taking an artistic liberty here, okay? And redefining this canon in a way they see fit. Why the fuck is it not a donkey? Okay, who gives a shit? That's the point. Artistic liberty is not an excuse. Artistic liberty is not an excuse, chatter. It is a formative part of the art-making process. What the fuck are you talking about? I don't know if you know this, but Greek mythology isn't real, okay? And not only that, but also it is redefined in a way that actually suits the character. But I will give you a great example of why you're just primed into thinking this and you don't actually feel this way, okay? It's the same principle behind Toph, okay? Nobody made a big stink about Avatar having, you know, a broad scope of representation from indigenous people all the way to people with disabilities, okay? Because back then, this wasn't an overarching narrative because all those fucking people, all these dumbass, neck-bearded fucking losers would cry about, like, the nostalgia component being lost in their lives because the flavor has been sucked out of their lives, and that, you know, games don't hit as much as they did when I was a fucking child. Andy's over here didn't actually fucking feel that way about Toph. Okay, that's the problem with the woke. Don't tell people how to feel while getting mad when you say the chuds tell you how to feel. What are you saying? There is no woke. There is no the problem with the woke. You're always gonna lose the young male vote. Brother, you are a fucking intellectually deficient moron if you think this has anything to do with fucking politics, or if the end all be all of your politics is you saw a person in a fucking wheelchair. Okay? Oh, dude, I'm voting for Donald Trump because I saw a fucking, like, crippled deity in a wheelchair instead of a donkey. Okay, brother, you deserve the fascist destiny that you have then. Okay? That's how a lot of these young men feel it. Yes. I need to smack the fuck out of those young men then, okay? And snap them back to reality. You fucking pussy. Have some fucking shame. Have some goddamn decency, dude. Men used to go to war. Men used to build things. Men used to protect those who are vulnerable. Now, all men do is sit around pimply-faced and cry about bisexual video games having fucking wheelchairs instead of a fucking donkey on a Greek mythological figure. What the fuck? You are a deeply unserious person if you want to tie this back to, like, what men are being afraid of or what men are sad about. This is all men see. Jesus fucking Christ. I saw pronouns in a video game and that's why I'm voting for Trump. What a fucking stupid way to openly admit that your existence is so pathetic and fucking meaningless. You're openly saying you're a dumbass. You know that, right? You're openly saying you're a weak person, that you don't have any sort of empathy or no, like, moral rudder, nothing guiding you, no moral compass whatsoever. See, your mods didn't even show the rest of the argument. That's not how anything works. My mods aren't stopping something, okay? Isn't Hephaestus the one that forges weapons? I don't think I've ever seen him depicted in a wheelchair until Hades. I read the Aeneid in Latin. I still don't remember the wheelchair. Wikipedia says nothing about him being a wheelchair either. It's only Reddit and Steam talking about the backstory of the wheelchair. It would be more accurate to have Hephaestus crawl around. This would explain his great arm strength to forge the weapons for gods. You understand that that is your own personal artistic interpretation in this situation. Okay? As I said, those men see it as a microaggression. Microaggressions? Now we're talking about men and the microaggressions that they see? Shut the fuck up, pussy, is what I say to these people who are crying about a microaggression. And the microaggression is seeing a person, a character in a fucking wheelchair. God damn. Have some fucking backbone, dude. I can't believe you're trying to make a broader fucking argument about how this is the reason why men are right-wing now. What the fuck? How do you not see? You just snap out of it. How do you not see that you're being a fucking ginormous pussy? Okay, be a man. Be a man! Stop being a fucking pussy! I saw someone with a disability visibly, and it hurt my fucking feelings. That's a microaggression for me. An able-bodied man? What do you mean? That makes no sense. And I saw it in a fucking video game that is going to be played by globally 1 to 10 million total fucking people. Okay, what are you talking about? You think this has any fucking bearing on the political outcomes of American society? Holy shit. We are so far removed from any sort of materialist understanding of the fucking world that we're talking about video game characters, like the third most important character in a fucking video game. Oh my God. The wheelchair argument is dumb because he's literally in a wheelchair here. No, but that guy read it in Latin, dude. And we don't know where this is actually from. They probably made this up later, okay? But he read the Aeneid in Latin. I swear to God, we need to do a fucking jobs program. Federal jobs program for all young men immediately. Instantly. They need to stop. This is ridiculous.
Powers. And no, the second...
I hate this permanent victimhood, dude. Holy shit. Permanent victimhood. Especially coming from people who don't understand who their masters are. Who just fail to recognize where the hurt is coming from and immediately fucking swing the crosshairs in the direction of those who are less powerful than they are, who are less represented than they are, is so sad. It's weak shit. You're a fucking weak little coward, okay? And instead of addressing the real problems that you are experiencing. You just hyper focus on punching down. That's what weak men do, okay? Strong men don't do that. You are fucking weak, and you need to snap the fuck out of it. It's so, like, where is the shame? I don't understand. Society's already designed in a way where you are disproportionately fucked if you have any sort of disability, let alone a visible one. And these guys who are able-bodied are fucking crying about the minor representation that is also, like, canonically adequate as far as the artistic interpretation goes. Like, that's crazy to me, okay? You are a weak person. You are a weak-willed and weak-minded person, but you can be strong, okay? You can become strong, but this way of thinking is actually leading you to become a weaker person, okay? Stop punching down.
The second thing you need to know here is that the gods in Greek mythology are not omniscient or omnipotent. They're not all powerful. They can't just do whatever they want. Now, of course, this combination of a god who both has a disability and is a great inventor has given rise to modern portrayals of Hephaestus as having created mobility aids for himself. It's sort of an obvious way to portray the character, right? So obvious, in fact, that it was obvious to the ancient Greeks, who portrayed Hephaestus in a wheelchair. He made himself a winged
I should have just played the fucking video. God damn it.
chariot thing with wheels that he used to travel around, and some depictions of Hephaestus have him using this wheeled chair. So the depiction in Hades 2 of Hephaestus in a wheelchair is totally fine, accurate to some ancient Greek.
Even if this didn't exist, it still doesn't make sense. It's still, it's like getting upset about that is still stupid. I just want you to understand.
Greek depictions even. I don't want to be too mean to Asmongold and the other whiny gamer boys here, so I'll just say, read a book sometime. You ignorant, snivelling worms. Or even do a basic Google search before you turn your mic on and just start saying whatever old shit off the top of your head. It's embarrassing. Anyway, that was Bullshit Hades Discourse number 1. Who's up for Bullshit Hades Discourse number 2? This one had to do with the design for Hestia. So, in Greek mythology, Hestia is the elder sibling of Zeus.
Where's Mr. I read Ain't It in Latin? I'm a black man, but I understand white supremacy systems very well, but your view to not see how small details over time inflame the majority, and your approach is why marginalized groups end up in a state of Sisyphus. Exactly my point. You are just as reactionary as the right. Didn't even let the video play. Dog, I'm sorry. I think you're too stupid to understand what just took place. Okay? First of all, I don't give a fuck what your background is, okay? Your stupidity is universal, regardless of whether you're black or white, okay? That's number one. Number two, the video disproved your jackass and actually made you look like an absolute donkey, okay? The donkey that you claim Hephaestus' only rode and never a fucking wheelchair. You understand that? Exactly my point. You're just as reactionary as the right. Didn't even let the video play. You don't know what the word reactionary is if you think that what I just did there is reactionary. You just think reactionary means reacting to things, I believe. And that's not what that means, okay? The word you're looking for is reactive, which I am, for sure. I react quite a bit, both to YouTube videos that I pause regularly and to dumbass chatters, no matter how fucking stupid they are, with the hopes that I could change their minds a little bit. But it seems like you are incapable of that. The video actually disproved your Ain't reading ass, okay? Oh, I read Ain't in the original Latin. I still don't remember the wheelchair. Wikipedia says nothing about him in a wheelchair. Still not getting it, and it makes you look worse. You wasted 20 minutes arguing with me, and you could have let the video play. I said something that stunlocked you for 20 minutes when the truth was 2 minutes after you paused. Still not getting it, but move on. I'm just pretending to be R-worded is not actually, has never been in the history of mankind an adequate substitute for what you just engaged in. Most people just look at you and think, oh, you're literally brain broken. You understand that right here. Let's time you out a little bit. Maybe you can go to a quiet place and just, think about the way that people are looking at you. Video game characters are important. It was the online vote that won it for Donald Trump. Most of us have good jobs. It's y'all progressive men that don't. Bro said trying to educate me makes you the bad guy. I know. This is American individualism right here in display. Okay, this is exactly what the fuck I was yelling about. This is the through line of Shaun's video and my anger and my resentment for what society has become. Okay, that person, objectively wrong in every aspect, has, instead of looking at why he was wrong and saying, you know what, my bad. It turns out I think I just, I just fired from the hip there. My bad. That's what normal people are supposed to do. That's what I do when I'm wrong about something. I apologize, okay? But instead, now the conversation turns into one surrounding me trying to be like, here's why you're wrong, and here's why it's not that big of a deal. But no, he has to smugly double down and just be like, huh, well, I guess my idiocy allowed you to be derailed for 20 minutes. Be a man. A real man, okay, recognizes when they're in the wrong. You're weak-willed.
She is the goddess of the hearth and the home, and is depicted tending to the hearth fire on Olympus. And we see Hestia in Hades 2 here has a fire poker, a crown of coals, hot coal earrings. She's very fireplace themed in general, and she's an older lady being older than Zeus, as we said. In terms of character, she's presented like a kindly grandmother type. She's warm, you could say, and in terms of gameplay, she grants you fire-based attacks that burn your enemies. She contrasts well with Demeter, her sister and another elder sibling of Zeus. Demeter is portrayed as an older lady who's very stern and cold, and who grants you frost attacks that freeze your enemies. You see, their designs not only reflect their personalities and their role in the story, but also how they function in terms of gameplay. It's character design. So why are we talking about Hestia? Well, on the 7th of May, very strange Twitter account V made the following post. I am unironically not buying Hades 2. The people who made Hestia just committed a crime against nature. They are so phenomenally shit at their job, and by existing in the industry they are taking away the position of someone more talented. And V attaches an image which contrasts a, quote, Greek depiction of Hestia with Hestia, quote, according to America, that's the design from Hades 2, and Hestia according to Japan, showing an anime girl. This post was later shared by Mark Kern, who added the statement that, quote, anime Hestia is the best girl. I thought long and hard about when it would be funniest to reveal to you how old Mark Kern is, but it's probably right here after he says anime Hestia is the best girl. How old would you reckon he is, if you had to guess? You might say, well, you mentioned he worked at Blizzard in the early 2000s, so say if he was in his 20s then, that would mean he's in his 40s now. That's a bit old, isn't it, to be saying things like anime Hestia is the best girl? And it would be, yes. And also, Mark Kern is 56 years old. 56 he is. I feel too old to be talking about some of this.
Dude, I would Sudoku at that point. You know what I mean? It's like the collective total of all of my work on this planet amounts to that shit. I'm going to play Sudoku. I'm Brian Kilme at that point.
It's nonsense, and he's old enough to be my dad. Anyway, who is this best girl anime Hestia? Well, she's a character from Danjomoro no wa Machigateru Daroka, aka Danmachi in English, is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? Probably. Out of another sense of due diligence, I watched a few episodes of this anime, and I can report back that it's your standard, shallowly horny fantasy thing. If you want a one-sentence review, Danmachi, it's as generic as they come. There you go. The world of Danmachi features various god characters who've come to Earth to mingle with humans, each leading a retinue.
It is a fun little way to tie up a narrative when I shit on something early on in the stream, completely randomly, and then I'm proven by a totally different YouTuber's YouTube video essay that spans over 2 hours, and in the 1 hour and 18th minute, he ends up basically proving exactly what I was talking about. That is wrong with fucking anime. Incredible.
With adventurers who explore a dungeon and fight monsters or something. The main character is the sole follower of anime Hestia there, and she's in love with him and gets jealous when he talks to other women. That's their deal. Character design wise, anime Hestia is pretty basic, I think it's fair to say. Women, that's their deal. Follower of explore a dungeon, and she's in love with him and gets jealous when he... I think it's fair to say. Her clothes are a bit torn at the edges there, she's got some ribbons. That's about it. Well, actually, the fan wiki for Danmachi points out that she's also known for having large breasts. Really pushing the boat out there in terms of anime girl design, aren't they? Breaking new ground. And what does her design have to do with the Greek Hestia, really? She's supposed to be the elder sibling of Zeus, but he appears in Danmachi as an older man with a grey beard. So why is anime Hestia designed like this? He asks, facetiously. Well, for reasons of fan service, obviously. The fans of this sort of thing are a bunch of horny little goblins, and this design is saying, do not worry, horny little goblins, this product was made with you as the target audience. Which, you know, whatever, I'm not going to shame the horny little goblins, they can like whatever they like. What I would impress upon them, though, is that when you see a character design that was not created with your particular brand of juvenile horniness as its prime consideration, that doesn't mean it was a mistake. In fact, it was almost certainly not a mistake. Hestia from Hades 2 is a really bad design if the target audience is anime perverts whose favourite character is nicknamed Lolly Big Boobs. But it isn't, thank God. Hestia from Hades 2 had a rather different design brief, I would imagine. The third bullshit Hades 2 discourse cycle I'll talk about today is the most interesting and relevant for us and has to do with Aphrodite, who is of course the ancient Greek goddess of love and fertility. Like the other characters, Aphrodite's design reflects her personality and role in the story. It has a lot of love hearts and roses, she's a conventionally beautiful woman whose gameplay power is to weaken and charm enemies so they either do less damage to you or they fight on your side. So she's seductive and charming. Character design again. She is also, you might have noticed, almost completely naked. So, almost completely naked, conventionally attractive lady. This is exactly what the anti-woke Outrage gamers claim to want to see. So you'd imagine they'd be pretty happy about this design, right? Well, on April 19th, Kotaku published an article written by Alyssa McCante entitled Hades 2 is the kind of hot we need right now, which praised
that dumbass chatter who doesn't know what reactionary is, the word itself, is about to learn exactly what reactionary as a political method looks like. Okay, it's not about reacting to something or just reacting to anything or how you react to certain things at all. It's this.
Praises Hades 2 for the diversity and depth of its character designs. And now this article caught some flack from the sad gamer men by making comparisons between the characters of Hades 2 and Eve from Stellar Blade. The article calls Eve's design bland by comparison to the Hades characters, which is of course entirely correct. Now, it should be noted here that the complaint about the character design is not solely about looks. It's not how Eve looks, it's that it doesn't suit her character or role in the story for her to look the way she does. Whereas it does suit Aphrodite's personality and her role in the story for her to look the way she does. This was always the point being made with regards to Eve from Stellar Blade, by the way. If all you have is the looks, but there's no character there backing that up, it's boring. That's the problem with Eve's design. It's not that she's hot, it's that she's boring. Of course,
I completely agree with you, but coming out of the gate swinging it hard at those guys just affirms they'll never see your perspective. Nah, dude. Sometimes you need... Dude, that's what being a fucking man is, all right? Big dog, sometimes you gotta fucking learn cold hard truths, okay? Maybe you just need to be yelled at a little bit. A lot of these guys have not had any sort of tough love from their parental figures, okay? No daddies in their lives, okay? Sometimes you need a man to tell you to fucking man the fuck up, nut up or shut up, okay? And to stop being a fucking pussy. If you're chirping about something that you are completely wrong on, okay, in terms of like aesthetic choices that a video game designer has made in the second iteration of a franchise that many people are not going to even play, okay, and if you think that that is the guiding principle, if that's your fucking North Star, and that is the reason that microaggression is the reason why your entire worldview has fallen apart and you have found yourself in the throes of reactionary sentiment, sometimes you need to hear from, you know, an older male figure that you are being a fucking pussy. And here, I'll take it one step further. That's what Andrew Tate and the like do all the time, for the record. They do that all the time. They tell people to stop being a pussy. They just tell them in the wrong direction, okay? They'll tell you, like, stop being a pussy and start grabbing pussies. So why are men so responsive to someone like Andrew Tate saying that, but not responsive to someone like myself? And also, I think you're arguing for a man that doesn't exist. This is a made-up person.
The Outrage merchants missed this point, either on purpose or out of ignorance, and made a whole bunch of videos highlighting the supposed hypocrisy, or hypocrisy even, of Kotaku saying that one of these designs was good and the other was bad. But I'm not all that interested in that point, they're just obviously responding to an argument that wasn't actually made. What I'm interested in here is that these videos gave the opportunity for the video makers to comment on Aphrodite's design.
So this whole time, the lefties didn't take an issue with fan service or the male gaze. They just wanted all the male gaze to be towards queer characters, queer identity, and what they find attractive.
I feel like there's a little bit of hypocrisy going on right here. Is it because Hephaestus is fat and disabled and checks off all the echo boxes? Is it because this person has a pointy-ass Pinocchio nose?
We got our female characters with a manly jawline. We got Aphrodite with a masculine face and masculine features.
It's a manly face. It's probably a trans woman.
You know what they call T-coded, like transcoded, T-coded? That's what I get from that. It's like a T-coded design.
It's like
you shouldn't know that. If you're like, why do you know that term? Why? It's weird that you know that term. If you're not trans and you don't have any trans friends and you invest this much fucking time and effort and energy into like being transphobic, it's weird.
Feminine body, masculine, vaguely.
The face is
ambiguous
androgynous.
Yeah.
Androgynous, yeah.
Those are some reactions to Aphrodite's design from both Hades 1 and 2 there. Around this time, Mark Kern shared an attempt to fix Aphrodite's Hades 1 design on Twitter, a picture which removes her prominent cheekbones, makes her thinner, thins her eyebrows, and so on. And Kern says, removing the man face makes a huge difference, but wokies don't get excited unless a character looks trans.
What does this motherfucker look like? Someone show me a goddamn picture of this motherfucker. What's his government name again? I need to show. I need to. I've seen it before. I just need to. He looks like his avatar. Yeah, Mark Kern, right? That's his name. Bro, that's in 2011, dog. This is what he used to look like in 2011. He doesn't look like that anymore. He looks way worse now. Okay? This photo has aged so much that Mark Kern would jerk off to a artistic depiction of it. Okay? I'm saying he likes lolly. Don't misunderstand me. Yeah. Peak Western masculinity guy. Grums isn't happy he got made fun of. He posted this 3 hours ago. I'm the one that prevented a boycott of Stellar Blade. I'm on multiple videos and posts that show me telling people not to boycott, instead buy and support the game. Never harass the devs. What? Yeah, he owes child support as well. I can't believe someone fucked him. Married 20 years, never divorced. Wife and happy kids. But thanks for showing who is spreading the real disinformation. And yeah, he did harass the devs because they tweaked one fucking article of clothing a little bit in a game where you could just straight up be naked. Out of like 300 different items of clothing that you could change, they changed the bunny suit a little bit. They added like a lace bra, and he fucking lost his mind. Was it confirmed he was a titty milk thief at Blizzard? No, it was not confirmed. I think people understandably draw that conclusion when they see him, though, and the way that he, presents himself online. Like, nothing weirder than this fucking dude constantly chirping about like how certain imaginary depictions of women are not fuckable enough for him.
So I have a few things to say about this. Firstly, you might be tempted to see all this as simple knee-jerk contrarianism, right? Since a Kotaku journalist praised Aphrodite's design, they now have to dislike the design on principle. And I'm sure that's part of it. But I also do think that the inclusion of a more diverse range of body types really does alter their perception of the character designs that in other contexts would more usually appeal to them. The problem is, as the Kotaku article points out, variety and choice. You see, it's not enough for the anti-woke gamer types for a game to have something that appeals to them. The game needs to only have exclusively. If it's got something else, it's almost like it cancels out. Just as they take objectification and the lack of diversity as a sign the product is for them, the presence of diversity, variety, and choice is a sign which says to them, this was not made for you. So the inclusion of character designs like Hephaestus and Hestia really does alter their perception of Aphrodite. They now second-guess themselves with regards to her design. They can't trust the developers anymore to solely pander to them. So even this very feminine design of a conventionally beautiful naked lady reads as masculine and ugly to them. Of course, if all the characters were conventionally attractive naked ladies, they'd think the game was great, but it really does have to be all, not just some. It's not that their tastes are not included here, they are, it's that they've excluded themselves. As a side note here, one surprising thing I saw watching videos about this were some people who appeared to be confused about the Hades series going woke.
Did these guys read the dialogues from the first game, or did they just keep hitting everything they saw in front of them? Hades has been queer as F since the first game. I played the first game quite a bit. I got close to beating it, put in probably a dozen hours, talked to all the side characters. I really enjoyed the first game despite its shortcomings. And yet I didn't get this whole super queer LGBT.
You didn't think Hades 1 was queer? That's insane. Horseshoe theory is real? Well, I didn't like the Joker. 33 minutes. EFAB responding to Jay Nicholson's "Well, I didn't like the Joker." 11 hours and 44 minutes. Ben Shapiro versus 25 Kamala Harris enjoyers. 3 hours and 25 minutes. Yep, that is the horseshoe theory.
Alphabet Mafia vibe. Apparently I wasn't paying attention.
What do you mean you didn't get queer vibes from Hades? It's Greek for a start. The main character's bisexual. There's a whole gay romance story about reuniting Achilles and Patroclus. The character Chaos is genderless. You can start a polyamorous relationship. No, you weren't paying attention. Anyway, back to fixing Aphrodite's design. Similar to fixing Aloy's design.
He didn't even need to go that far. All you needed to do was just show the character designs and be like, yeah, you think this game isn't queer? You fucking idiot.
There's a problem here, isn't there?
Goddamn donkey, you fucking baboon.
To do with the categorization of certain facial features, prominent cheekbones and jawlines and so on, as necessarily masculine. So just for the anti-woke gamer boys today, I'm going to introduce a new video feature, which I'm sure is going to be a big hit. Okay, let's play. Let's look at some women. And here are the women we're going to be looking at today. Olivia Wilde, Liv Tyler, Angelina Jolie, Keira Knightley. Some women there. I hope you see my point here. Also, those aren't random women, obviously. They are famous celebrities, commonly cited as being among the most attractive people on the planet. It's kind of sad that my version of a reality check for the gamer guys is showing them Hollywood celebrities, isn't it? I think if they went for a walk in a public park, their heads would probably explode. Also, there's a further disturbing tendency here, which is the conflation of certain...
Yeah, you would have been like... They'd be like, whoa, wait a minute, this is Unreal Engine 5 has ruined the world. The character development here is too realistic. I don't like it. I don't like the way that these women look, you know, some of them even have like a little bit of peach fuzz on their cheeks. I hate that.
Common adult facial features with common masculine facial features, and then using that designation to brand adult women who have those features as unfeminine or ugly. When, no, some women have prominent cheekbones, prominent jawlines. There is nothing necessarily gendered or even to do with attractiveness about those features. The problem with Hades 2, of course, is choice. It's diversity. It's that there is more than just the one thing on offer. And this answers my question about Baldur's Gate 3 from earlier, by the way, because while, yes, in that game you can play a straight-down-the-line, heterosexual, cisgender man and pursue a relationship with a conventionally...
I think the funniest thing, Trump one dumbass cry about it. I know, I'm crying. I'm crying. I'm very excited at your dropshipping business falling apart, collapsing, you know, when the tariffs kick in. Listen, dog, my merchandise is made in the United States of America with union hands, okay? I don't think Trump supporters can say the same about whatever fucking Trump merchandise they sell in their Trump stores.
Attractive woman, you have to select that option. You have to be involved in the process to declare your own desires. You have to press 1 for English, basically. The anti-woke gamer men we're talking about today don't want that. They don't want to be a part of diversity. They want to be separate from and superior to it. Again, we're talking less about sex or sexuality and more about who media is being made for. For the anti-woke crowd, this is what is actually attractive about Stellar Blade. It's not the sex, because there isn't any, and it's not the romance, because there isn't any, and it's not even the sexualization, really, in isolation, because they will turn on a game with sexualized characters if they perceive it to be too diverse or inclusive. It's the lack of diversity and the objectification. It's a fine line between definitions here, but there are certain conservatives who dislike sex and sexuality in media because they view it as a kind of modern moral degeneracy, but they do like the objectification of women because that reinforces a conservative hierarchy. And this objectification doesn't necessarily mean sexualizing women in the way you might expect. In fact, it can even come in the form of the desexualization of women. Less important than the sexualization itself is that women do not have agency, that they are there to be objects acted upon by men. And just as this can take the form of telling women to get their tits out, it can also take the form of telling women to cover up and be ashamed. These are just two sides of the same coin, really. The important thing is that women are being told what to do and not choosing for themselves. So women should conform to certain beauty standards, but in an automatic and unconscious sort of way, because the conscious choosing of those standards requires women to have a level of agency that socially conservative men find unacceptable. And Eve is perfect here, of course, because while she looks like a bikini model, she has absolutely zero idea that she does. She and the rest of Stellar Blade's female characters didn't choose to look the way they do, they just look like that, for zero in-universe reason. And the socially conservative gamers took this to be a political statement on behalf of the game's developers. Stellar Blade must be intentionally on our side, they thought, deliberately championing our cause. It must be making a political point with its scantily clad ladies. Now, just to clarify here, it isn't. Stellar Blade makes zero intentional statements about real-world society or politics, and certainly doesn't offer any opinions about silly culture war nonsense. As far as I can tell, Eve is designed the way she is because her designers like looking at bikini ladies, and they didn't really think about it harder than that. Eve's design certainly doesn't seem to be intended as any sort of intentional cultural statement. Nevertheless, in the run-up to Stellar Blade's release, the Gamergate remnants went to lengths to try to divine this intention from the game's marketing and social media posts. For example, about a week before Stellar Blade came out on the 21st of April, the Stellar Blade account on Twitter posted, "Stellar Blade offers the same uncensored version in all countries, including the Japanese version." And then they posted the same message in Japanese. Now, seeing this in isolation, you might assume it to be a message intended to assure prospective Japanese buyers of the game that the version of Stellar Blade released in their country was not going to be censored. You see, you might know that Japan's Computer Entertainment Rating Organization is relatively strict on new game releases compared to ratings agencies in other countries. For example, they censored some of the violence and sexual content in The Last of Us Part 2, and they've previously refused to issue ratings to games that feature violent content, like Dead Space and the Callisto Protocol, to name a couple of examples. So this tweet was clearly intended to dispel worries that their Japanese audience might have about receiving a censored product, you might think. But no, it turns out this tweet wasn't about that. It was actually Stellar Blade giving a middle finger to the woke. That's right, just before the game releases, there's barely enough time to squeeze in one more discourse cycle about Stellar Blade versus the woke mob. Stellar Blade uncensored worldwide, Shift Up announces amidst puritanical and feminist criticism. Stellar Blade scores massive win against the woke. Game will be uncensored for the entire world. I can't be censored, says Eve. I like this video thumbnail, which has Eve flipping off the other person.
Two things that are consistent in all of the criticisms. Number one, it's almost always about controlling women's bodies and enforcing that mechanism of control, which they feel is lost in their immediate lives. Women are the, arch enemy. They've refused to have sex with them. Women have refused to have sex with these fucking losers. And therefore, all of society's problems can be attributed to that. So we must go back to a traditional way of existence, a traditional mode of existence. Hasan, thank you for this. I struggle to understand your non-political content, but I see how such trivial things like a person shitting needlessly on a video game character stems from a larger societal problems that can also be casually reinforced, like toxic masculinity in an online space, is really eye-opening. Hell yeah, chatter. I'm glad you're recognizing that. This is why, yes, everything can be political. But like I said, it's about controlling women's bodies and like maintaining that they are objects of desire or making sure that they are more modest in their appearance if they choose to see fit. It's more about taking away that bodily autonomy from a woman. And then number two is just an endless well of stupidity, okay? Every single point that Shaun in this video touches on stems from a made-up hysteria. This is why I always yell at reactionaries. This is why I always yell at right-wingers in general, conservatives in general, because they make up false narratives and then they get angry at that false narrative that they made up. And instead of just like, I don't know, scratching the surface a little bit, engaging in a little bit of self-reflection, they refuse to do so and look for more people and more content that corresponds to their biases. They just genuinely, deliberately look for more false narratives that give them comfort. And it's ironic because these are the same guys in the Gamergate era that used to claim that the left is in an echo chamber. And they still kind of do that. I will never understand why someone will go out of their way to look at a false narrative, recognize and get so close to understanding its falsehood and refuse to interrogate it. I just don't get it. I just don't understand it. I don't know why people would rather, instead of facing cold, hard truths, refuse to do so and make themselves dumber as a consequence of that.
There, someone who I guess we're supposed to infer is a woke person who really wants Stellar Blade to be censored. Can you believe these sorts of video thumbnails are still being pumped out, by the way? I saw a channel while making this video that was created 3 years ago and has 2,500 videos on it. That is multiple per day, and all of them are exactly the same, and all of them have thumbnails like this.
Like, I am entirely too insecure, but I feel like it's a healthy dose of insecurity that I routinely worry that I might get something wrong. And I try to make sure that I have a decent enough understanding before broaching a subject matter. And sometimes I still end up getting things wrong. I talk for 8 to 10 hours a day, and I immediately apologize for it if I do. This is why I hate when people say, "Oh, you're backtracking." It's like, no, it's not backtracking. And it's not something that should be punishable either. It's something that should be welcomed. When you get new information, that actually goes against what you have previously thought was the way things are, you reconsider the way, you know, the ways in which you arrived at that conclusion. It's called growth. It is not a vice, it's a virtue. And yet many people present it as a vice. I don't like that. Society also rewards people who double down.
You know, with all these stock woke stand-in characters they've been using for 10 years now. Can you imagine making multiple of these a day? Forever. It's like a horrible recursive nightmare. Anyway, this rather generous extrapolation of the tweet about censorship cemented Stellar Blade's reputation as the anti-woke flagship game of the moment. Stellar Blade censored. It's taking a stand against the woke. It's gonna take us back to the past and make video games great again. Now, unfortunately, something happened to interrupt this rather premature victory lap. Stellar Blade came out. Oh no. What's this? Stellar Blade censored on day one? Gamers are pissed? Stellar Blade censored now? They betrayed us? PSN accounts cancelled over Stellar Blade censorship?
This was what broke my mind about Gamergate 2.0 narratives. Like, I did some videos on this, and at the time, many people were like, oh, Hasan, why do you care about this? Who cares? It's inconsequential. It was a representation of a much larger problem, okay? That's why I was like losing my mind over it.
Well now, what's happened here then? Let's go to our reporter live on the scene, Mark Kern, and see if we can figure out what's going on. More rumours coming in about Stellar Blade as the situation is organic. People are reporting that these outfit nerfs were weeks before the day one patch. There's speculation that the more risque versions of the outfits may be New Game Plus unlocks, but there is no confirmation yet. Taking down the Stellar Blade outfit post until I can get more confirmation. Stellar Blade needs to release a statement now. I'm waiting for more confirmation tonight/tomorrow. Thinking is better than reacting. Took down my tag post of Stellar Blade. Let's see what happens tomorrow. As more information comes to light, I'm taking down my tweet about should I buy Stellar Blade.
Again, 56-year-old man, by the way, 56-year-old man. I just want to remind people how 56 years old he is.
Until I see full confirmations tomorrow. One thing to be aware of is that there are people who want Stellar Blade to fail. There can and will be misinformation posted, so we should all be vigilant. They want those pre-orders cancelled. And as I've pointed out before, in corporate warfare...
Like, not only do they make up this conspiracy that everyone is against Stellar Blade, they're now doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on said conspiracy that, like, in fact, definitely does exist, I promise you, and we have to combat against it. This way of thinking is the most Reddit way of thinking imaginable. It's something that I see quite frequently, perhaps most frequently on Reddit. Reddit has this way, I've addressed this before, right? Oftentimes, you'll see something that is objectively untrue on a subreddit, right? A commenter will make a statement that is objectively untrue. And instead of addressing whether or not this statement is true or not, people will then engage in jokes as a way to reaffirm the truth of the thing that is objectively false. They'll double down, triple down, and create entire worlds off of this false premise. It's a very strange thing, and yet it happens all the time. It happens on TikTok as well. But the reason why I'm using Reddit is because, like, LSF, for example, is a great example of this. Just a genuinely false thing can be brigaded into oblivion. And instead of people examining what the actual truth of the matter is, like the apocalypse situation, instead of examining where this is coming from, people would rather start assuming that that falsehood is real and then launch additional jokes off of that underlying false premise. Very strange. I think it's a cycle of reinforcement that occurs. And Reddit is the best example of this because there is this like Bill Maher style smugness associated with Redditors usually, right? Where they feel confident. They feel like they have arrived at a truth that other people were not aware of. And now they're making jokes about that because they're so superior. When in fact, most people would look at that and go, what the fuck are you talking about? You're wrong.
The bad actors can be rival company PR firms. Be careful. I posted before I had the full story, but took it down within minutes. We'll be more careful next time. It's not looking good. Here are the screenshots and build numbers from Reddit user JewShelter1349. Same outfit. Censored. Uh-oh, it looks like Stellar Blade was censored, and you can see the horrifying effects of that censorship there. It's unrecognizable, isn't it? It's like a completely different game now. A little bit more fabric has been added to one of Eve's outfits. But wait, if you can believe it, things get even worse. This is another confirmed outfit censored in Stellar Blade, original on left. We're working on changing.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, if you were to go out in the real world and try to explain to a bus driver this exact predicament, the bus driver would kill you with hammers, okay? Like, if you try to walk outside and explain what happened here in your favorite video game that has 300 outfits, including one that is like entirely naked, getting what you describe as like a First Amendment violation because they added some latex to a latex bra to one of the 300 outfits, that person has the moral responsibility at that point to deal with you, okay? And, you know, either they would kill you with hammers or immediately call the authorities to 5150 your ass and put you in an involuntary hold because you present a danger to yourself and others around you. And yet this kind of narrative, because of the way that the internet works, can continue to manifest and fester. Wanting nudity in video games is worthy of violence. Yeah, dude, thank you. Thank you for doing the thing that, once again, everybody hates, yourself included. No, I did not say I hate waffles. I said I like pancakes, okay? That's a whole different sentence that you just came up with on your own. The left is refusing / not able to give any reason to come to their senses, and I challenge us all to look at the irony of inclusivity here. Saying that the sexualization of humanity can't be done ethically is why we're gonna lose the next election as well, man. These people need to be brought into the fold, and that requires doing something seemingly impossible. Consensual sexuality being fine and okay from a movement standpoint. Yeah, I think we need lobotomies. I take it back. Nah, gamers got to get lobotomized, dude. Nah, we got to bring back lobotomies, actually. Dude. This is not a political movement, okay? What you are describing is not a political movement. Like, this has no bearing on the election. I hope you understand that. It is akin to saying, I'm a flat earther, and liberals need to actually acknowledge that there is validity to the claims of the flat earth. The right owns sexuality, though? No, they don't. What the fuck are you talking about? Have you met a right-winger? The fuck are you talking about? Not only do they not, but also you're hallucinating and demanding that we subscribe to your hallucinations and act as though they are real. What? I already said I had no idea what's going on. Yeah, you clearly don't if you say stuff like the right owns sexuality. Oof. Not only did you say the right owns sexuality, but also this is why the left will continue losing elections, because I guess they've made a big deal about titties in video games, which is not even a thing. It's not even a real thing. The entire premise of this video that Shaun made is to show that it's actually not a real thing. It's a fake outrage. Notice how the title says Stellar Blade, the fake outrage, because it was made up. There was no outrage against it. I played it. Okay. I played it. Great. I looked up at the sky to look at the undercarriage, look at the fucking ass cheeks of the main character. I did that. She was dope. That's not a real thing, okay? This is the problem. The problem is we're currently addressing how the outrage around Stellar Blade was entirely concocted by these fucking weird, sweaty little gross loser perverts. And then instead of people going, what are you talking about? We don't even know what the fuck this is. People just went along with, no, people are actually objectively outraged at this game. And they're very angry at this game. And they want this game to fail. And they just kept leaning further and further into their hallucinations. The problem, this is not a left-right dichotomy, okay? This is a much larger problem. Left-right dynamics exist in this conversation. But the much more consequential problem is truth versus falsehoods, okay? People's willingness to believe in falsehoods as long as it, you know, goes against their as long as it corresponds to their own personal biases that they've developed around their ideology. We're watching people collectively hallucinate, okay? Getting together online at a time when we are increasingly isolated, increasingly alienated, with no sense of community whatsoever. There is no bus driver to check you, okay? That's why I talk about the bus driver test. There's no normal, real human being that actually checks one another at this point. If your only interaction with the outside world is other like-minded individuals that the algorithm shows you, okay, you end up arriving at false conclusions and then seeking out further false narratives that correspond to the false conclusion that you started off with. And at no point do you go, maybe I'm wrong.
Get back. Who are you? It's not about inches of fabric. It's about fighting the double standard and getting Stellar Blade customers what was advertised. Hashtag free Stellar Blade. Now then, I have a lot of things I find funny about this. Number one, it is very funny that Mark Kern decided to talk about all this in the manner of a news reporter breaking a story about Air Force One going missing or something. Like it's a developing situation that we need to be careful how we talk about. Very good. I love that. Secondly, there are outfits in Stellar Blade which are still much more revealing than any of the quote censored outfits, which leads me to believe the outfits were not in fact censored and were merely changed in the course of the game's development, something which the Shift Up developers later stated was the case. Also, the scale of these outfits.
Yeah, here's another great example of that, because I remember covering this at the time to make this broader point that a lot of these people are just like deluding themselves into believing in falsehoods. Okay? I realize that now there's a shit ton of ableism and reactionary garbage attached to the sexualization thing. Not trying to defend anything. Okay, I don't even know what you mean by that. I don't know how you came to that realization, but listen to the major point here. The point is there was no leftist or liberal outrage towards this fucking game. They concocted it themselves and then believed their own concoctions. It's like if you have a partner, okay, if you have a girlfriend, let's say, okay, and she gets mad at you in the morning and you're like, what the fuck did I do? And she gets mad at you and says, well, you cheated on me in a dream and now it's your problem, okay? Conservative politics, especially in the gamer field, is basically just that. I have hallucinated an alternative reality in which you've done something that's pissing me off. And now it's your fucking fault. Okay? It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous mode of existence. And the internet and the way that algorithms work is making it worse. Same thing happened on SNL with Sydney Sweeney. Boobs killed woke. Exactly. But because people never actually breach the boundary of their ideological enemies unless it is directly to combat them in an incredibly uncharitable way. No one actually arrives at this conclusion. No one actually sees the other side's position. And this does not mean that your interlocutors automatically have good points. Okay, I'm not saying that at all. But it's important to understand where they are coming from. What do you think about AOC changing her bio? See, this is what I mean. This person is doing the meme right now. She changed her bio. She changed her description on Twitter years ago, man. Years ago, okay? And I don't know why she did it, but it does not matter. But someone told you it happened overnight. Someone told you it was a direct response to this last election. Everyone is fucking QAnon now. There's something that every single person has a QAnon type belief over, no matter how silly it is. The guy you're covering uses tweets of one dweeb. Why are you saying it as a whole gamer community? Wait, what? Like, bro, the vid you're watching covers one dweeb gamer. Yeah, that one dweeb gamer is basically the figurehead that all these other hundreds of videos that he's shown are getting their markers from. Okay? Like, what do you mean? He also perfectly showed exactly how this kind of false narrative manifests. One fucking dipshit tweets something, it goes viral. A million dipshits on YouTube make YouTube videos. Asmongold watches those YouTube videos and reinforces that narrative. And the only victim in this situation is just the truth. The secondary victim in this situation is all of those fucking dumbasses who believe this as though it is the truth when it's not and get mad about it. They made a fucking petition at the time over this, by the way, with 95,000 verified signatures. There are still people signing on to this petition to this day. Do you understand how fucking insane that is? I think you guys forgot how insane this was. We watched the videos that people recorded at the time. I couldn't believe it. It's collective hysteria.
Outfit changes is so minor. From how Mark Kern's talking about it, you'd think Shift Up swapped Eve from a bikini to a nun's habit or something. So actually, while we talk about this, I'm going to leave a couple of GIFs of these outfit changes on the screen, just so we don't lose perspective on what exactly it is we're talking about here. Next, I think it is completely hilarious that Mark Kern is up in arms about Stellar Blade customers, quote, not getting what was advertised, given that his job is selling skins for a video game that doesn't even exist. And you'd think that he would understand how this sort of thing works, given that he's a game developer himself, remember? For example, Mark, have a look at this. Here's the Ember Twitter account advertising an in-game character skin for purchase, represented by a 3D character model of a cat girl. It's a mock-up because there is no game to put her in yet, of course. The thing is, though, you had already sold access to this skin before, when it was represented by 2D character art. And the earlier version of the skin, which you sold on your website for money, is more revealing than the newer version. Look how much more fire is showing in the earlier version of the skin. You sold this, and then you changed it to be less revealing. So can we get a discourse cycle out of this, maybe? Hashtag free Ember, perhaps? Because this is exactly what you're criticizing ShiftUp for doing. Well, it's not exactly the same, I suppose, because their game actually came out, didn't it? Next, I really appreciate that this air-quote censorship controversy came so quickly after the Twitter post which stated the game would not be censored. ShiftUp unintentionally caught the anti-woke culture war YouTubers off balance there. They were led into seeing Stellar Blade's uncensored release as a victory over the imaginary woke mob they were pretending were trying to censor the game, but then the game came out, and it was censored. Or at least they thought it was, which turned their fake victory into a real defeat. They built this imaginary woke strawman that was trying to censor Stellar Blade, and then it won. So I'll claim that victory then on behalf of the woke mob. Well done, everyone. We won that one, and we didn't even have to do anything. Congratulations. Now, one of Mark Kern's tweets there talked about changing Stellar Blade back and said hashtag free Stellar Blade. So let's talk about that. You see, in the wake of all this traumatizing news, Mark Kern posted a change.org petition with the aim of getting ShiftUp to revert the outfit changes to the versions shown in the game's trailer. And let's read that page together. Stellar Blade is a phenomenal new game that just launched on PlayStation 5 worldwide, but it has a problem. The content has been censored from the original trailer version posted by Sony. We, as gamers, want this content back. We relied on it. We made the game the #1 pre-order worldwide because of it, and this is the true game we want. What do you mean you relied on it? You relied on this. Stellar Blade is more than a game. It's become a cultural beacon for freedom of expression in a time where game publishers like Sony are censoring games more than ever. Stellar Blade was a breath of fresh air, and Gamer rallied behind it because it meant things were changing, getting better, and the voice of creative freedom was ringing loud and clear. Beautiful. Notice here how Mark Kern is avoiding saying that Sony censored the game, because of course he has absolutely no evidence that that is true, so he has to say things like game publishers like Sony are censoring games in general. Talking about creative freedom and freedom of expression is also funny because 1, I didn't see you talking about that when you were sharing edits made to the work of other game designers, and 2, of course the only word out of ShiftUp so far is that they wanted to make these changes. They said this is the final version.
Remember when I said narrative overcomes truth? When the actual fucking director of the game came out and was like, what are you guys talking about, dude? We made these decisions on our own. What the fuck are you talking about? They didn't believe the fucking video game developers. They were like, nah, you're lying because you caved to the woke mob. What do you do? What do you fucking do in that situation? It is such an objectively pathetic existence, only fucking made worse by the fact that these people are hallucinating it. What do you do? And there are literally millions of people like this. Another great example that I'm reminded of is when Asmongold was talking about how Yakuza was going woke or something, not knowing the fucking history of the goddamn franchise at all. I say this as a massive fan of the Yakuza video game franchise, okay? Massive. It's people who don't understand the genre and people with no interest of interrogating or examining the underlying political motivations in a sea of people who are just careless and don't care and only want their version of the world to be the reality. Yeah, Kiryu was a trans ally in Yakuza 3, okay? Many, many years before people even thought about hating on trans people. Same with fucking One Piece. Like, people who are One Piece fans who also have like right-wing opinions blow my fucking mind. Some of the main characters, some of the main heroes in the story are literally trans. The fuck? And they were invented like in 1997. You know what I mean?
Of the game they wanted to make, and you're the one trying to make them change it. Now, Mark Kern had two paths forward at this point. Either he could accept what ShiftUp said about not being censored and cut his losses, or he could spiral into delusion and conspiracy theories. I wonder what he did. First, they tried to search ban me. Now they're stopping hashtag Free Stellar Blade from trending. Who are they supposed to be here, even? Tell me again this is just a controversy. These people are very threatened by the normal sexuality that Stellar Blade represents. That is definitely the word that comes to mind for all of this. Sign the petition. It's important. It really isn't. You see, even though Shift Up said Stellar Blade is not being censored, it is being censored. We just don't know how, and whoever did it is so powerful that they can somehow force Shift Up to lie about being censored, as well as force Twitter to limit Mark Kern's social media reach, all in the name of destroying normal sexuality, represented here of course by maybe an inch of fabric on a video game bikini. And sadly, this campaign of censorship didn't stop there. On the 24th of May, patch 1.003 for Stellar Blade was released. This patch added new content to the game, including 2 new Kunoichi outfits. Now, even though these outfits were only obtainable after the patch, 1.0 versions of the outfits existed in the game files, and those outfits were slightly different. Do not panic, however. The website freestellarblade.com has a little write-up on the changes and a guide to accessing the original versions of the outfits, and I quote, "The skirt on the Kunoichi nanosuits were lengthened and made more rigid in version 1.003. The skirt's transparency decreased in version 1.003. Changes were made to Eve's body structure from version 1.0 to version 1.003. The Kunoichi nanosuits are available on the disc. To access them, you need to have Roxanne's affinity maxed out, then you would need to up patch to version 1.003. As soon as you load into the game, you should receive a prompt with the rewards. Immediately back out of the game and down patch to avoid save file incompatibility. I just thought I'd give that a signal boost here so we can all get access to the earlier versions of the outfits. It certainly looks worth the effort."
I'm sorry, dude. Your life is so fucking meaningless if this is something that you ever considered even for a moment. Okay? It's meaningless. There is no meaning in your life. There is no glory that you will ever retain. You're done. You're nothing. You're worse than a bottom feeder. You're worse than actual dog shit that someone steps on. It's crazy. How can you be a human being, okay, living in 2024, where man has achieved such impressive feats, overcome nature, built skyscrapers, visited the moon, okay? We have a goddamn international space station up there, okay? And this is what you worry about? Pathetic. Okay? You are a pathetic thing. I have a hard time even acknowledging your sentience. It is shocking. I don't know. This shit black pills me into oblivion. When I see stuff like this, when people take it to this level over such minute differences, it actually hurts my brain. It kills my soul. And I think people come to this with the recognition that it's a little, childish. And that's why they have to slap on this is actually a war against free speech and protecting, war against censorship. And it's actually a free speech argument. Because, like, if your argument was standalone, you wouldn't feel the need to add on these additional identifiers that your conquest is actually something that transcends beyond you being a horny little gremlin. But it's not. I mean, this isn't even horniness. Like, it's so fucking pathetic, dude.
Doesn't it? Now, this patch also added in 2 other outfits for Eve, Midsummer Alice and Midsummer Red Hood. These are 2 variants of 2 of the controversially changed outfits we've been talking about. The Red Hood outfit swaps Eve's undershirt for a body harness and adds thigh-high stockings, and the Alice outfit adds in a bow, a collar, and some lights down the front. So these are new outfits, but they are also clearly iterations on the earlier versions of the supposedly censored outfits that Mark Kern and the Horny Goblins are upset about. Now, this introduced a little awkwardness into the Free Stellar Blade movement. You see, Shift Up added in 2 outfits, which are kinda like the ones we said we wanted, so we could claim that as a win, but also, they didn't uncensor anything that we wanted them to uncensor. These are new outfits, they didn't change the old ones, and all the rest of the outfits we're upset about are still censored, supposedly, so what should we do? FreeStellarBlade.com is very clear about where they stand on the update. Do not accept these outfits as a win. The entire point of this is freedom of artistic expression. There's now 12 outfits that are censored with the latest update. So that's where they are. Mark Kern, however, decided to split with FreeStellarBlade.com and took a rather different approach. We did it! You did it! Hashtag FreeStellarBlade celebrates as Shift Up and Stellar Blade uncensor outfits. Thank you everyone who participated in the 8-step plan and the petition. Please sign the petition, which will now be sent as a gift to Shift Up. Lucky them. So many have helped to make this possible.
This is the peak of American activism, dude. Fucking porn-brained Coomer consumption. That's it. America's got one fucking speed.
This is what...
Here, yeah, this is it. This is the truest This is the truest fucking skit ever told about
What
us.
Europeans think America is like. I wake up at 8 a.m. to the sound of gunshots and violence. Then after that, I have breakfast, an 18-piece fried chicken bucket with a 2-liter bottle of Coke. Then at 9 a.m., I start my daily commute from Los Angeles, California to New York City. Along the way, I drive through intense poverty and homelessness. I will do nothing about it. At 10 a.m., I arrive in New York City. I talk loudly about how great America is. At 11 o'clock, I decide to head down to Miami. At 11:45, I arrive in Miami. This is where I get my tan. After that, I head back to Los Angeles. It's awesome that I'm able to visit all 3 American cities in one day. Around 1 p.m., I go out to eat for lunch. I leave the waiter a large cash tip of $100. At 1:30 p.m., I publicly lean against the wall to rest. Around 3:30 p.m., there's another shooting. At 6 p.m., I have dinner, an entire apple pie that I wash down with a 2-liter of Coca-Cola. Then at 9 p.m. there's an alien invasion. This seems to only happen to the important countries. And that's my day.
Did you know that?
You sent the bad link, a broken link.
Everyone worked so very hard. That's right, we did it. Stellar Blade has released 2 new outfits for the game, and that means we win. That's what we were asking for all along, of course, 2 new outfits, and we got them. In my favourite history podcast, The History of Rome, host Mike Duncan has a recurring joke about generals and emperors who would extract themselves from an unwinnable military situation by simply declaring victory and going home, and this is the culture war version of that, basically. Even though 0 of our original concerns were addressed, we won. And the replies to this tweet are quite funny. We've won nothing. The original...
Minute differences. How dare you try to minimize the issue and not realize they're radically different looks, leading to a radically different experience in a game that was paid for. You are victim blaming. Come on. Bait used to be believable, dumbass. I know it's Bait because I recognize his fucking name. No person that knows what Anatolia is gonna fucking craft a statement that fucking stupid, sincerely, okay? Also, we don't need believable Bait. There's plenty of it, okay?
Censorship is still there, but they've won from your reaction. No, they know they can bribe us and distract us. Your reaction means we've...
What is this? I'm sorry, but this is fucking crazy. She should be bannable. Denims talks about you. What did he say?
Denims talks about you? Dude, I only watch Denim's clips offline. Yeah, with my pants off. Yeah, I can't watch those on stream. Yeah, just shouldn't bother.
Same principle as what we were just talking about, okay? Oh, damn. Someone talked about my sexual assault allegations from former partners. Yeah, I jerk off to them. That's sick. I mean, this is it. There's a lot of people that have this sort of tendency. They need to fucking grow up, okay?
Lost. You are wrong. They added outfits in order to...
This entire video is you know, talking about people that behave this way.
Distract from your real intention, which is that they are actually just keep spitting on the fans by continuing to censor the game diligently. They are insulting the players' intelligence by thinking we wouldn't notice. Look for yourself. We have nothing to celebrate. It only get worse. Discord in the ranks here. Now, the latest twist in this tale is that ShiftUp recently went public and posted a job listing for an investor relations manager, one of the duties of which is overseeing the publication of ESG reports. Now, you might say, Shaun, I don't know what that is, or how it could possibly matter. But no, it does matter, it turns out. ShiftUp sells out and embraces ESG. Stellar Blade is doomed. Stellar Blade developer ShiftUp goes public, will now publish ESG reports. Stellar Blade sells out to ESG, ShiftUp goes public and becomes compromised, and so on and so forth. Also, this news led Mark Kern to rather dramatically declare that ShiftUp has fallen. After going public, they will be required to publish ESG reports. So okay, what the hell are ESG reports? Well, ESG is one of those acronyms, along with DEI, that 2 online right-wingers have come to see as a synonym for wokeness. It stands for Environmental, Social and Governance, and ESG reports basically detail the environmental and social impact of the practices of the company. Now, I have my own anti-capitalist opinions about the actual point of this sort of thing, of course, but I can relay that the...
You're a content creator? How much of this is farming? I think there's a healthy dose of farming, especially from the content creators that engage in this kind of rage bait, but there is definitely a real audience for it, and it's growing, and that's really fucking scary. And it's not scary because like, ooh, these, misogynistic men are scary. Like, I don't give a fuck. First of all, I'm a man, okay? So it doesn't impact me in the same way. But secondly, it's scary because society is fucking collapsing, okay? I can't stand this level of stupidity and the incompetence and the purposeful ignorance at play here. I hate it. I hate it so much. Could it be that we are so terminally online that we think this is a serious discourse? I don't hear this shit outside at all. No, this is absolutely a terminally online piece of discourse. But there's two different problems here. One, unfortunately, as we become more and more isolated and alienated, things online do have the capacity to impact things in the real world. And last but not least, if online is your only interaction with the outside world, then this does have the capacity to fucking dupe you. And this kind of idiotic hallucinations end up reinforcing a lot of bad behavior and a lot of bad ideals. And in the interest of pursuing this shit, a lot of these losers then make it their lives' mission to endlessly harass video game journalists and the developers that make these fucking video games. Stop saying still on this vid. It's almost done. And it was actually a very fucking informative video. Shut the fuck up. The trolls are purposely weaponizing being naive in the real world. It's mostly people being lazy and just taking information by osmosis. Yes. I mean, you guys saw an example of this that is very close and personal to me. This, a version of this cynical, bad faith smear campaign happened with this platform that you're on for the past month. It was completely concocted by bad faith actors with an agenda to undermine the platform with a very specific goal of either unbanning a person that was banned from the platform for good reason or banning me, a person that they have identified as their enemy. And when that couldn't happen, they went after people in my orbit. And then when that didn't happen, they went to other organizations to try and apply even further pressure. They went to advertisers directly. And when that didn't work, they still went along with this narrative that it was actually successful. And in that process, I'm sure there were thousands of people who just go about their day-to-day existence that just took that for granted and will never think about it ever again. But now in their minds, they think I am an anti-Semitic terrorism lover, and Twitch is you know, defending me because Dan Clancy loves me personally, and that advertisers actually left in droves, and Twitch took a major hit, but they still wanted to protect me because they also are anti-Semitic terrorism lovers, you know? Look, there's still people in here that say, ha ha ha, nice accountability. Like this person legitimately probably believes everything that happened in this process, despite the fact that this is why you've fallen off projection. Ha ha ha, nice accountability. Like, do you see what I'm saying? And he's, this is a sock account that they created in October 5th, 2019. Okay. And they've obviously been following for quite a long time and have unfollowed in the process and followed again as recently as July 15th, 2024. And they're still in here. Some people would much rather believe a lie than dare to interrogate what the truth is and self-reflect. Bro, you are on video. What are you even saying? This is what I mean. There you go. This is it. Accountability. It's always accountability. Gamergate was about ethics in video game journalism. And this last iteration of Gamergate, this like microcosm of Gamergate here, was also, once again, accountability, bringing about accountability to a platform. Like, why are you defending the point of view of the cartel's law? Mexico equals cartels to Hasan. Like, this person is defending Donald Trump's possible moves of bombing Mexico or invading Mexico to, you know, destroy the cartels or whatever. So they're at least Trump adjacent, okay? And here, in the very same breath, a day later or 2 days later, they're talking about accountability. You are on video saying the dumbest shit every day. Brother, for most normal people, and I can't stress this enough, they do not see the world in the way that you see it. I know it's virtually impossible for you to comprehend this, but most people in the real world actually are diametrically opposed to your way of understanding the world, okay? If your framework revolves around defending Israel, you are, unfortunately for you, the minority. You are the overwhelming majority of Congress, are the minority in even American society. Defending Israel, Trump adjacent. Okay, what's your perspective then? What a phrase. It's impossible for you to comprehend accountability. I used to think you were an intellectual. Okay, what's your, now I know is pseudo. You moved on from one person that you thought was an intellectual, me, to another person that you think is an intellectual because you have no opinion for yourself. Okay, you hopped around. Explain to me what your worldview is. Why were you defending Donald Trump's Donald Trump's policy of potentially sending SEAL Team 6 into Mexico. My worldview is that you're an idiot. Exactly. That's it. That's what's that's the point. I know. That's why you're a dumbass. You have no genuine politics. You have no genuine interest in anything. You've been overwhelmed with hatred. Why would you openly admit that about yourself? I'm asking you, trying to have a normal conversation with you, asking you what your personal politics are, and your personal politics is that I'm wrong and that I'm stupid. That's not real politics, you fucking moron. You have lost your humanity. You basically have lost any sort of comprehension. You are simply a pawn for another content creator who doesn't even know you exist, okay? You're in here trying to fight his battles. Your viewers are pawns, dumbass. Again, I will ask you one more time. Why are you defending Israel or Donald Trump's policies of invading Mexico or engaging with the cartel in a violent manner, thinking that this will be a successful way to combat drug trafficking in this country? This is the worst part of parasocial relations, man. I know. Go take some Fent. Do everyone a favor. Buddy, between you and I, who do you think is closer to the verge of suicide? The guy with a fucking sock account titled Twitch Viewer 05978, who's been following me since 2021 and crying in here? Or the Twitch streamer that he's watching? I'm crying so hard, we can tell. Anyway, we'll get back to you when you have a coherent thought that is individually a coherent thought that you came up with on your own, okay?
Nominal point of this sort of thing is to attract socially conscious investors.
I know where that kind of hatred comes from, okay? I've been angry and vulnerable in the past myself. I know where you're coming from. I know what it feels like when you are desperately looking for a sense of community online, okay? But the moment that you absolutely fucking despise a Twitch streamer, okay, a dumbass Twitch streamer like myself, to such a degree that you are in the chat, like trying to wage intellectual battles in your mind, to feel a sense of humanity, to feel a sense of recognition that you have lost in your own personal life, is a moment where you are diving deeper and deeper into the sadness, the pit of despair. I want what's best for you, okay? I promise. You pulled me up, dumbass intellectual battles. Oh my God. All right, well, I hope you get better. Let's finish this video now.
Invest in us not just because we're a good financial investment, but because we are good for society, that sort of thing. Of course, even the mildest corporate overture towards any sort of social responsibility is read as Marxist infiltration by the sorts of people who see Marxist infiltration everywhere they look. And so Shift Up hiring someone whose job will be, in part, to publish ESG reports is seen as necessarily compromising. They have caught the woke mind virus, in other words. Alas, they were supposed to save our culture with their video game bikini ladies, but it turns out that was probably just a really strange thing to expect. Something that jumped out at me watching dozens and dozens of horrible videos over the course of making this horrible video was how few of these video game commentator channels seem to be run by people who actually play the games they're talking about. I saw a lot of people not just talking about how great Stellar Blade is without having played it, but talking about Hades without having played it, Baldur's Gate without having played it, and so on. Like, I didn't play Hades, and I have no plans to play Hades 2, but I'm outraged about these Hades character designs, and, like, why? Well, we know why, don't we? People like Mark Kern and the YouTubers who make these videos are outraged tourists. They don't really care about what they're talking about, they just want attention. And something happened quite late in the production of this video which illustrates this point rather nicely, which is a little annoying as I now have to add this part you're hearing right now into an already long video, but on the other hand, it is a good example. So on the 20th of August, Mark Kern posted the following tweet about an upcoming game in the Monster Hunter series, Monster Hunter Wilds. And he says, "What happened to Capcom? From Monster Hunter World to Monster Hunter Wilds." And then he posts two pictures comparing two seemingly random characters from those two games. The Handler from 2018's Monster Hunter Worlds, and a new character called Olivia, shown here in a frame from the third trailer for Monster Hunter Wilds, which was also released on the 20th of August. The intent here was obviously to get another "they're turning the beautiful ladies into ugly ladies" discourse cycle started, but this one was thankfully killed before it got off the ground. Monster Hunter fans ruthlessly mocked Kern and his silly cherry-picking until he was forced to delete the tweet. Kern then posted another tweet about Monster Hunter Wilds, saying, "Took down the Capcom tweet. Monster Hunter Wilds is safe. My bad." And he attaches a picture of Gemma, another—
Bro, so much of this is just fucking fake outrage. That's the greatest antidote, though. Other fucking vicious nerds being like, you better shut your fucking bitch ass up. I love Capcom games. They never miss. Fuck you. Asman believed this shit? No, dude, he didn't, okay? He believed the fucking 1.5 million views that he accrued on his YouTube channel from believing this shit. That's what he believed. Come on. Come on, dude. Jesus Christ.
A Monster Hunter Wilds character, who he apparently does find attractive. Good for him. But Kern has accidentally revealed something here. You see, Gemma was shown in the first Monster Hunter Wilds trailer, which was released back in May. Any Monster Hunter fan paying attention to Monster Hunter Wilds would already be aware of this character, so Kern doesn't know what he's talking about here clearly. But even worse, Gemma also shows up in the third trailer, the one featuring Olivia, the character Mark Kern was complaining about in his tweet, so he must not have seen it. He's only seen this screenshot. So it's not just that Mark Kern isn't some big Monster Hunter fan, he hasn't even seen the trailer that he's complaining about. Kern and the Outrage tourist YouTubers like to complain that their hobby has been infiltrated by fake fans.
Listen, as long as your audience does not care about the truth and they only want a comfortable hug box, which is ironic because many people project and say that that is my audience, okay? It doesn't matter. You will never get punished for being wrong. How many people yelled at drama farmers that were like, Hasan was wrong about the Al Ahli hospital being bombed by Israel, when everything that Israel said subsequently after, before bombing every other fucking hospital in Gaza, okay, came out to be completely false? How many people punished those guys? No one. Zero. The answer is zero, because those guys were not interested in Israel or Palestine. They were interested in fuck Hasan content. Do you understand? So for a lot of these people, they have no well-established opinions. They have no interest in what's going on. They're just in it for the battle, okay? They're in it for the blood sport. They've decided someone is the fucking enemy, and that person needs to be humiliated at every step. And they also don't understand, just like that one chatter that I was talking to earlier, like, they don't understand why normal people don't respond to these endless fucking maniacal smear campaigns, not just against myself, but against like these video games and shit too. Do you not understand? They literally are so firmly grounded in a falsehood, in a false narrative, that they can't comprehend why most people in the real world don't give a fuck. They don't understand when their narrative that they've developed in a hug box is not reflected by the majority population in the real world. That's the problem. They get worked up, and even when the thing that they got worked up over doesn't actually follow through, when there's no actual material gain to be made, they just move on to other things or decide we won anyway. It was actually a victory nonetheless. That's the reason why that dumbass Dan Saltman, who's now fucking actually Dan Can't Stream on Twitch for, you know, doxing people and shit, was running around being like, I actually took away hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue from Hasan. What have you guys done? I saw that. Like, he was doing victory laps. It's like, I don't like running ads anyway, dumbass. The fuck do you mean? Oh, I'm suffering so much. No, he said 3 to 4 million. That's hilarious. I refuse to take on advertisers that I don't want to get money from. I deny advertisers to the tune of $1 million specifically for the election night coverage. If I cared about like farming higher amounts of revenues, I wouldn't work with fucking American-made union shops when I'm doing my merchandise. I just go to fucking China. Okay, I go to Indonesia. If I cared about farming as hard as these fucking delusional losers care about it, I would take on any advertiser that wants to pay me. Okay, I don't need it. So you push them while not getting paid? What do you mean? The point is, not only am I principled in this circumstance, but also when the narrative fails, okay, when the narrative fails, they just move on and they try to like derive a victory from some other place where they're like, no, we still got a victory here. Lowy literally laughed at you for getting cucked on ad revenue on your contract. I know. He showed you run a lot of ads by posting a proof of how many times ads are mentioned in the chat. Yeah, of course ads are mentioned a lot in my chat because we gamified the advertising when I had a contract that forced me to run the minimum amount of ads that I could, okay, which was 4 minutes. And in the process, before Twitch told me I can't say it any longer, I used to tell people to use an ad blocker to avoid seeing those ads. That's what's so funny about this process, that like people max out on the 22 minutes of ads an hour on this fucking platform. Nobody says a goddamn thing, and they run it periodically or randomly. I wanted to do it in a way where it wasn't as disruptive and that people could fucking not see the ads. Just show this to the haters. Yeah, I mean, this is a fucking silly flex too. Like, yeah, I have a lot of subscribers. I mean, that number will go down next month after the election. Okay, it will, but it still doesn't fucking matter. Yeah, I used to tell people to use a VPN or an ad blocker to avoid seeing the ads. I work in advertising with accounts that spend millions per month. We don't care what delusional internet nerds think. I know. Can we get this guy off stream? No. All right.
But that's all projection. It one's pretending to be fans of video games for attention on the internet. Now, it wouldn't really be right for me to armchair psychoanalyze people based on just a few tweets or YouTube videos, of course. But if I was going to, watching a lot of these videos, I'd say I saw a lot of people who seem to have lost their passion for their hobby. They've got bored, but they aren't moving on. And this is a thing that happens sometimes. Someone was into a thing when they were young and carefree, but now they're older and more cynical, and they're not really having fun anymore. But instead of moving on and trying something new, they get angry. This thing is part of my identity. It's not that my earlier appreciation for the thing was that I was excited about having new experiences. It's that the thing was good, and now it's bad. So someone ruined it, and I'm gonna moan at whoever I reckon that was. What a lot of these commentators seemed to want from Stellar Blade was for it to take them back to the good old days, before all this politics and wokeness, a simpler time where you could leave your door unlocked, and you couldn't move for video game bikini ladies. This is of course just the video game version of the standard conservative nostalgia for a past that doesn't really exist. You know, the world was a brighter, happier place back when I was an actual child and didn't have to pay rent or know about wars. What a coincidence. For any of these people who are watching this video and have actually stuck around to the end, which I seriously doubt, I'm going to do a bit of a selfless public service right now and go back over what we've talked about today and explain what was actually happening. Okay, so first of all, individual video game journalists are not generally in the business of trying to destroy video games. Reporting on video games is how they get paid, after all. They might call certain games or gaming tropes bad, but that's just their own opinion as critics and reviewers. They're not trying to hurt you. It's got nothing to do with you, in fact. They're actually trying to make games better, according to their opinion of what better is anyway, but that's not to spite you. Again, it's got nothing to do with you. That's just what their opinion is. Next, big mainstream video game journalism outlets are not generally in the business of trying to destroy video games, especially video games from big publishers like Sony. They make money from running ads on content related to game releases. IGN, for instance, makes guides and videos about Stellar Blade. That's part of how they make money. For this reason, mainstream journalism outlets actually tend to be rather generous with review scores for big game releases, because publishers pay to advertise on their platforms, so they have an incentive to stay on friendly terms with the publishers. And of course, if a mainstream journalism outlet was trying to destroy a video game, they wouldn't bury that attempt in an otherwise positive demo preview on a single foreign language website, would they? Next, if a video game company does censor violent or sexual content, it is vastly more likely that decision is being motivated by getting particular ratings from media ratings agencies, rather than anything to do with some amorphous idea of wokeness, i.e. it's mostly being driven.
I just keyed on to why you're particularly proud that your merch is made in the US and some creators' merch, Teddy Fresh for example, was claiming to be ethical and sustainable, see made in China. It's a subtle diss. You're out of your fucking mind if you think that this has anything to do with Ethan Klein, brother. Are you insane? No, my merchandise has always been made in America by union hands, far before I even knew who Ethan Klein was, okay? Get the fuck out of here. No, it is not a sneak diss at all.
And by older, socially conservative people.
Yeah, my entire worldview is actually a sneak diss of Ethan Klein. That's why I'm fucking pro-union labor. To sneak diss Ethan Klein. The fuck? Come on, guys. Please. Stop obsessing over Ethan Klein, please. It's unhealthy, okay? It really is. It really is.
And capitalist financial incentives, not blue-haired feminists on the internet. If some ratings agency says you need to tone down the violence or sex or change the blood to be green or whatever, or you don't get to release in our country and therefore potentially lose profits,
I mean, you knew who he was, but you hadn't met him yet. I feel like annoying people will call you a liar. Yes, I hadn't met him yet, okay? I knew him as the Vape Nation guy, and I did not know what his brand was at that time. My mistake. I know that if I'm not hyper specific on every little thing that I say, there's an army of little gremlins. There's an army of little gremlins out there that are just like going to clip everything to be like, oh, see, he did this is a sneak diss. I think they were literally like covering me reading a chat to make it seem like I was actually saying something about Ethan the other day. It's fucking nuts.
companies will do it.
Please,
but that's got shit all to do
let's
with
be done
wokeness.
talking about Ethan.
And that's the next point, of course. There wasn't some big woke mob push to ban or censor Stellar Blade. A couple of journalists criticised some aspects of the character designs in the game because it's their job to give their opinions about video games, and that is the full extent of what actually happened there. The narrative about the woke mob coming for sexy ladies in video games used to be built on cherry-picking and misrepresentation, only watching very particular sentences of Anita Sarkeesian videos and the likes, but today it's more like an ancient superstition or something. We are long past the point where that argument was centre stage now. The industry and the discourse are both moving on. The woke mob isn't coming to try and take Stellar Blade away, because, to be blunt, Stellar Blade's character designs don't really matter all that much. The argument really was about a lack of diversity in character designs, and Stellar Blade's style of character design just isn't as prominent and overrepresented as it once was. This isn't a two-sided culture war battle anymore, if indeed it ever was. It's the Outrage tourists versus their own imaginations. Next, I have a note about concepts of attractiveness here. Now, this goes beyond the remit of talking about video games, of course, but watching all these videos, I heard a lot of talk that was very obviously coming from people who just assumed that they were the default type of person, and that only people who are like them play video games, and furthermore, that any attempt to appeal to people who are not exactly like them must be some evil scheme or other. I heard a lot of gamers want this is what gamers want to see, when what they really mean is, this is what I want to see.
Yeah.
It's a very basic point, but there is a much wider range of what people...
I think the inherent irony of this kind of fucking, this kind of cause championing is that, like, they get mad because they think, like, video game companies are making decisions specifically on the virtues of diversity to appeal to a different demographic. And they want themselves represented more. Like, they're doing the same thing. They're like, oh, well, I want anti-woke representation. Please, what the fuck? Why are you doing woke representation? I want anti-woke representation. When in fact, like, gaming companies don't give a fuck about woke representation all that much either. They just care about making money. That's the only thing they care about. That's precisely the reason why games are dog shit. Or I wouldn't even say games are dog shit, because I think this past year had a litany of sick-ass games. Well reflected in the award season representation right now.
People are attracted.
With one exception, 5 Hearts Under One Roof. That game not being represented as the greatest game this year, it was a snub, and I'm sick and tired of avoiding it. Okay? It's a real fucking snub, dude.
To than what you're attracted to or what you see as the default. There are people who are attracted to a whole range of appearances, body types, fashions, whatever else, and some of them are even attracted to that part of the range that is more traditionally considered to be unattractive, something which a lot of the people whose videos I was watching could probably stand to appreciate a little more, shall we say. Also, when you see big corporations diversify their products and publish reports about the social impact of their activities and market their products to multiple target demographics, do you know why they do that? It's to make money. Big corporations aren't trying to usher in some Marxist takeover of society. Unfortunately, they're trying to get paid, so they market their products to appeal to a wide variety of people. What you see as going woke is, when it comes to big corporations, mostly just a profit-motivated diversification.
Yep.
They want diverse demographics to feel included, sure, but that's because they want to sell products to those people. There's no need to go on the hunt for the shadowy Marxist puppet masters pulling the strings of society when actually the things that you're annoyed about are being caused by boring old capitalist economic incentives. The right are in kind of an awkward spot here because of course they can't say they think capitalism is bad, but also they hate diversity. So if a profit-motivated capitalist corporation diversifies its products to target a wider audience, they're kind of in a bind. They can't call that out for what it actually is, so they have to sub in the spectre of communism and blame that instead. Not to go off on another tangent right at the end here, but I guess part of the issue is that the right see capitalism as something close to human nature, the system that best reflects humans at their default. And I suppose if you believe that, and also you're socially conservative, you'd expect capitalism to produce products that were narrowly targeted towards each type of person, and those products to be consumed by that type of person. And of course, the gamers we've been talking about today thought that video games fulfilled that role for them. So faced with inclusive media featuring a diverse cast of characters targeted at a wide range of different people and that media being successful, that's a challenge to the whole conservative worldview right there. Probably even more so in the cases where the diversity is merely profit-motivated tokenism, because that communicates that even the cynical capitalists have calculated that enough people like diversity to justify making diverse products. If there was more money in producing only regressive, non-inclusive, narrowly targeted content, they'd be doing it. But since they're not, that means the conservatives must either be wrong about people or wrong about capitalism. But that can't be true, so enter the cultural Marxist puppet masters perverting the true course of history or whatever. Now,
all the bad things about capitalism are actually secretly communism is such a common take. I know. It's just the classic dumb guy opinion.
The annoying thing here is that this push to make products that appeal to different demographics is one of the more benign economic incentives driving corporate decision-making. But some other economic incentives really are hurting gaming. Right now, a lot of gaming conservatives have the strange idea that if a game or gaming company or journalism outfit fails, it's only because it's gone worldview sustained with a constant regimen of confirmation bias where all examples that don't work are either ignored or attributed to conspiracy theories. But in truth, it often doesn't matter how well things are doing. You can have the most profitable or critically acclaimed gaming company or website in the world, and it can still be destroyed from the top down by finance people who care more about the next quarter's profits than any sort of long-term sustainability. We've seen companies broken up, sold for parts, the employees all fired or poorly replaced by air quotes AI. We've seen games ruined by pay-to-win mechanics, arbitrary microtransactions, and other predatory monetization schemes. We've seen CEO payouts skyrocket while their employees, the ones who actually make the games, can get laid off at a moment's notice. These are the actual things that are hurting the games industry. Anyway, I'll wrap up today with a message to Mark Kern. So, Mark, you can't just hitch your culture war wagon to whatever new game is passing by and expect that to reset media back to how you thought it was 30 years ago. Obviously, it's not going to happen. It's not possible. And if you think I'm wrong there, and it is possible for a video game to do that, you are supposedly a video game developer. You are allegedly making a video game, if you can remember. So why don't you be the change you want to see in the world? Listen to the people who, for some reason that I do not understand, actually still look forward to Ember. If all you do is react in the culture war, you lose. You're not going to get anywhere by just complaining about how the tide is turning against you. You need to create your own things. And not just for silly culture war reasons. You have taken a lot of money off people with assurances that you would make a video game. But Crumbs is much too busy, of course. You see, Subnautica 2 has some characters who aren't white in the trailer. He doesn't like the new Tomb Raider cartoon. The next Assassin's Creed game has a black character in it. Hephaestus from Hades 2 is in a wheelchair. Oh, we did this one. Just the same old rubbish over and over again. The grift economy grinds on, and poor old Stellar Blade, once the centre of attention, is now all but forgotten, as all these new grifts will be too in time, to be replaced.
Okay, we didn't spend that much time on this.
With newer, equally pointless ones. Each piece of media being examined with fickle and fleeting attention, scanned at the surface level solely for the purpose of sorting it into one of two categories, the sole determinant of worth. Woke or unwoke. What a shallow and frustrating way of engaging with art, using up your limited time on the earth to experience it. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching today, folks, and thank you especially to all of my supporters over on Patreon. Patreon supporters get early access to all my videos, so if that's something that interests you, I'll leave a link in the description for you to check out. Okay, that's all from me today, folks. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bro, I took a nap and came back and it was still playing. I took a nap. Time to visit Grand Canyon. We're not going to do Grand yet. Jesus Christ. Y'all are fucking crazy. That was a banger video from Shaun, friend of the show, Shaun. Came back in a big way. And I'm, you know, I was very excited. I normally don't watch these like long videos, but I think that's some old hat shit, you know? I used to do that and I'm glad I did it. And I don't really care if you had an issue with it, okay? I think it was an awesome video. We got gotcha drama and the Korean gender war. I kind of want to watch that. This was a fun watching commentary, but I just remember why we don't watch normally long videos in here. No, I mean, it's the weekend. We can dial it back a little bit and dive into some stuff that's been annoying to me that we haven't gotten a lot of time to cover in the sea of all of the awfulness that is happening in the real world.